I was going to say. This evening, I'm Jordan Klein, and over the next few hours, we're going to be navigating our way through the first round of the 2018 NFL Draft. We're going to be bringing you live analysis throughout one of the most exciting nights in football. And there are so many incredible storylines to talk about tonight, where childhood dreams are going to be fulfilled and the glass of every NFL fan is half full. So throughout the show, we're going to get appearances from our 4 expert analysts who have appeared on Medill Sports Talk throughout our 2018 season, plus our 2 big board analysts who are going to break down the draft positions and what these NFL teams need. And as I said, there are so many incredible storylines to follow tonight as the draft gets underway. So to start tonight's show, I'm going to send things to the 8th member of our team, Olivia Reiner. Olivia, how are things going in the control room?
Well, Jordan, as you can see right behind me, our crew is hard at work trying to make this show the best it can be. Our director, Juliana Sherry, you could say, is quarterbacking this production, which brings me to my first storyline, which is, of course, the quarterbacks. Now, 5 to 6 of those are projected to go within the first 32 picks, and their depth is unmatched. USC's quarterback, Sam Darnold, has been widely predicted to be a lock for the first overall pick. The Cleveland Browns are in need of a quarterback and could take the USC product right off the bat. Other quarterbacks in contention for the first round are Wyoming's Josh Allen, UCLA's Josh Rosen, Louisville Cardinal Lamar Jackson, and most controversial, Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield. So reports came out earlier this morning that Mayfield would be going to the Browns, but NFL Network's Ian Rappaport is claiming otherwise. He stated earlier today on NFL Network that he talked to some NFL GMs. Some are saying yes, some are saying no. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see, Jordan.
Awesome. Olivia, thank you so much for that update. Everybody's talking about the quarterbacks in this year's arm race, but One of the most overlooked storylines of the 2018 draft is the need for offensive linemen across so many teams in the NFL. And Eric and Nick are at the big board to break down this year's deep O-line class.
Oh, all right. Well, sorry about that. Technical difficulties, guys. We're getting everything running and rolling here. We are ready to break down all of the lineups that you're going to see, whether it's the arms race, whether it's the offensive line, interiors, and tackles. So let's kind of get into it real quick. So who are you liking right now? We got Quentin Nelson, Isaiah Wynn, the other Notre Dame guys. I mean, it's going to be exciting to see who goes first.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Frank Ragnow really impressed me. I know we have him towards the bottom of the interior lineman class, but I think his ability, he's really a beast in that run game, and I think he's going to be a great help to a team, whether he plays center or he moves to guard.
Yeah, I really like those guys. Obviously, we know that maybe, Connor Williams coming off, whether or not he had a good year a couple years prior,
so it's
and whether or not he's going to have that going into this next season in the NFL, we'll see. I really like him. Of course, everybody knows Quentin Nelson. Probably going to be the first one going off. Who he's going to get picked by, I think he might get picked number 8. So we'll see what happens. Guys, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. We're going to hear from them periodically throughout our show. But for now, we're going to send it over to a package from our incredible Darren Zaslow, who was on site today at Soldier Field to cover the hype surrounding the Chicago Bears in this year's NFL Draft.
Yeah, this definitely also has to be next then.
Draft party tonight. The Chicago Bears have the 8th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, and excitement is already starting to build outside of the stadium. So, who do Bears fans want the team to select? And with the 8th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select
Bradley Chubb out of North Carolina State.
Who are the Chicago Bears taking?
Quentin Nelson. They're going to take whoever's going to get us in the playoffs. Don't matter.
Last year, the Chicago Bears drafted quarterback Mitch Trubisky with the 2nd overall pick out of the University of North Carolina. However, this year the team is focusing its draft plan on bolstering its offensive line and revamping its defense. Excitement is also building for the draft party at Soldier Field.
It's tremendous fun, especially when the weather is nice. If the weather is nice, the camaraderie of seeing other Bear fans here from different parts of the country, different parts of the state is a wonderful thing. We like the players that they have, that the alumni and also the current players. We look to try to get autographs and meet them and wish them the best for this season.
About 15,000 fans are expected to attend tonight's Bears draft party right here at Soldier Field, which begins at 4 p.m. But for who the Bears will decide to draft with the 8th overall pick, we'll just have to wait and see. At Soldier Field, Darren Zaslow, Medill reports.
Awesome, thanks, Darren. It's good to see you still have that rocket arm from your days playing D3 baseball. So, now that we've talked about the Bears, a couple of other storylines in the draft, let's talk now about the first 5 overall picks. And to do that with me are our first set of analysts here today. We've got Connor Yan and Dan Comer. Guys, what are going to be some of the storylines that you're most excited about following as the draft continues tonight?
Well, obviously, the first thing you think about is the quarterback storylines. I don't think there's been, in recent memory, a draft with this many quarterbacks and this much debate of who could go number 1. The reports today that Olivia mentioned with Baker Mayfield possibly going number 1. Also, in recent days, Josh Rosen, it's been reported that he might drop, which could give the Patriots an option to trade up to him and get their replacement for Tom Brady. So there's a lot of uncertainty with where all these quarterbacks are going to fall. And, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what all shakes out.
Yeah, I'm with you, Connor. I think the quarterbacks are the story of this draft right now. You got to look at that first pick. Cleveland's been very tight-lipped about it. Are they going to take Josh Allen? Are they going to take Baker Mayfield? Could they surprise people and take Sam Darnold, who I think is the best quarterback in the draft? The other thing you got to look at, like you said, are the Patriots going to make a move? They've been rumored to be interested in Lamar Jackson. What would he look like in their system? There are a few other picks out there that you got to really look at. Offensive line, this is a high-depth offensive line draft, especially in the first round. And we got to look at the running backs as well. What about those 2 kids from Georgia? You got Chubb. and you got Sony Michel back there. Are they going to go first round, second round? Will injuries push some of those guys back? So that's something we got to look at. And how high is Saquon Barkley going to go? Potentially the best overall pick in this draft.
Awesome. So now let's break down what you guys think is going to happen with these first 5 picks. Obviously, so much speculation, so much smoke screening going on from some of these NFL GMs and everyone basically around the league. We don't know what's going to happen. What do you guys think is going to happen with these first 5 picks? So let's start with the Cleveland Browns. If you had to say right now, who are they going number 1 overall? Who is it and why?
I think Cleveland will go quarterback at number 1. I don't think it's going to be Baker Mayfield. I'll buy that when they actually pick him. I don't believe any of that. I think it'll be Sam Darnold. It seems like he's kind of been their guy for a while, and I think when it comes down to it, that's who they're going to pick.
I agree with Connor. It's going to be a quarterback. It has to be a quarterback. Cleveland has whiffed on quarterbacks recently. I also am definitely a little wary of the idea that they're going to take Baker Mayfield, who in many ways is reminiscent of Johnny Manziel. I actually think they're going to stick with Josh Allen despite some of the racial insensitive comments that came out this morning or over the night. So I look at one of those 2 guys. They've got Tyrod Taylor in place. They've already said that they're not going to be starting their rookie quarterback off the bat. I think that means they can go for a project. I think Allen is that guy.
And staying with the Browns here, we've all heard rumors about the possibility of the Browns going quarterbacks with number 1 and number 4. How reasonable of an assertion is that to make? Do you think they're going 2 quarterbacks in the first round, or who are they going to be looking for in that 4th pick?
I couldn't imagine they do that. I guess cover all your bases and consider it and weigh those options. But, I mean, I think they go whoever's available, Saquon Barkley or Bradley Chubb. You have to figure that the Jets take a quarterback, and New York, they're the Giants. They might take a quarterback as well. So
if you have a talent like Bradley Chubb, you take Bradley Chubb at 4. If you have talent like Saquon Barkley, I think you've already got a person on the roster there. They signed Carlos Hyde to a 3-year deal in the offseason. They've got some positions covered, but if you can really supplement that defensive line pressure with Myles Garrett and then add a guy like Chubb, you're looking at a really talented 4 or 5 guys to start the Cleveland Browns 2018 season.
Dan, you mentioned Saquon Barkley. A lot of people think that he has the potential to go number 2 overall to the New York Football Giants. There's been a lot of hype surrounding this guy, one of the most athletic players we've seen in the draft in recent years. I mean, I think he put up 29 reps on bench press for a running back. It's unbelievable. Do you think he's going to go number 2 to the Giants, or do you think the Giants are probably going to pick a quarterback? Dan, I want to hear your thoughts.
The Giants are going with Saquon Barkley. A lot of the smoke around them is that they want Saquon Barkley. Now, we know, look, running backs have been devalued in recent years, but you have Ezekiel Elliott. You have a lot of other guys that have been going higher. Fournette in Jacksonville led rush offense last year in the NFL. They like Saquon Barkley. He's a guy who in the running game has drawn comparisons to Adrian Peterson. ESPN ranked him as their highest running back since Adrian Peterson came into the league. He's also got that physical run style, and he's also a great receiver out of the backfield. He's someone that fits the mold of the current NFL and could be like a Le'Veon Bell with his receiving, and then like an Adrian Peterson type runner.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him, like you mentioned, 29 reps on bench at 225 at the combine. The guy is an animal in the weight room.
Unbelievable. His
squats, the videos of that surfaced before his final season at Penn State, and he's just like, there's no red flags with him. There's no character issues. He can catch, he can block, he can run, great cutting ability. He can do it all. And if Darnold's gone, Darnold's kind of been rumored as that's the Giants guy. And so if the Browns do take him at number 1, then why not take Barkley at number 2? He's probably the biggest can't-miss prospect in this draft, probably in a while. And you go with him, I mean, that gives them a running game, a strong running game that they haven't had in ages.
And after the New York Giants select in tonight's draft, we have the New York Jets, who ranked 28th last year in total yards on offense, 29th in the league in passing touchdowns. They only had 30 passing touchdowns last year, so the rumor is they're going to select a quarterback as well in the first round. Based on who you guys think is going to go to the Browns with that first pick, it sounds like Saquon Barkley, very likely to go to the Giants with the second pick. Who do you think the Jets are going to go with as their quarterback of the future with pick number 3?
You want to take it? Do you want me to take it?
You go first.
I can take it? Okay. I look at a guy like Baker Mayfield, if he's available. He's got that big personality, can lead an offense. He could handle the New York media. The other guy you got to look at, Josh Rosen's been high on their board. There have been whispers about him, but I think whoever they have as their top-ranked guy, we don't know. That's the thing, is an NFL draft room, they could fall in love with one guy, and it's going to be that one guy. Now, if I were the Browns, my top pick, it would probably, if I were the Jets, my top pick, if he's there, it would be Josh Allen. I think he's got the highest potential. I think if he's not there, look, it's one of those three guys. Might be Rosen, but I expect he's going to fall. Baker Mayfield, if he's there, though, bingo.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, two guys that Dan mentioned. Those are two guys that come in and they can change the culture of that locker room. They've been so accustomed to losing over the last several years. And you've got a guy like Jamal Adams on the defense at safety that they picked last year high, and he's kind of set the tone for that defense. And then you get a signal caller that can do the same thing for that offense, and the Jets could be relevant again. You look at it, Tom Brady is going to be done playing football in a couple of years, whether we like it or not. Eventually he's going to run out of time. And if they get a solid quarterback in there, Jamal Adams leading that defense, that could be a team that could contend in the AFC East moving forward.
Very nice, very nice. Again, so much excitement, speculation about these first couple of picks. We already talked about the Browns now, number 4 pick. They are likely going to go with probably the best talent that's left in the field. A lot of people are saying Chubb. So let's move on then to number 5, the Denver Broncos. A lot of people, again, are saying that they are going to be in the market for a quarterback. What do you guys think? Who do you think they're going to go with for number 5?
Again, I think it all comes down to who they like. So there's so much in front of them. There's so much uncertainty. They don't really know who they're going to have a chance to get. Assuming there is a quarterback that they don't like, I like them to take Quentin Nelson, the guard. He's an elite offensive line prospect. Usually we don't see guards go high, but you look at what he's done at Notre Dame. He's an experienced player, athletic, strong. He's can run block, pass block, and he can be a big force on the inside of that line for them for plenty of years to come.
I'm with you, Connor. If they keep the pick, I think they go Quentin Nelson. The question is, if one of their quarterbacks isn't there, John Elway has said he's open for business. You have a couple teams that might be willing to trade up. Buffalo's been rumored trying to get into that top 5, maybe draft the quarterback that they like. You also have a team like Arizona that could be drafting up to look for a quarterback. I don't expect, unless John Elway is in love with a guy, that he's going to draft a quarterback. He just signed Case Keenum in the offseason. I think they're going to let him ride with the team for a couple years, and then if he doesn't do well, look, they're in a good draft position in a few years, draft another quarterback, draft a high guy. These guys come along every year. So I think they're going to either stay, get Quentin Nelson, or trade back and maybe pick up some extra picks.
You just mentioned trade back. Who do you think is going to make that move tonight when it comes to either trading up for a player that they want? We've heard a lot of speculation. I've heard that the Bills may trade up in order to get the quarterback of their future. What surprise move are you guys anticipating for tonight that may shake things up, either from a trade-up perspective or maybe even an unexpected pick? Dan, what do you think?
The Bills. I think the Bills are the team that's going to trade up. If they do trade up, if they see the quarterback they want is there, they're trading up. If it's not the Bills, I think you could look at a team like the Raiders. The Raiders, John Gruden comes in, he's going to want one of those, sideline to sideline linebackers, and if he feels like Roquan Smith, a fast defensive leader, Butkus Award winner out of the University of Georgia, if he can get Roquan Smith and he's afraid he won't slide down to 10, look for the Raiders to maybe move up a couple spots to grab their guy.
I like to see the Green Bay Packers. I think that their new GM, Brian Gutekunst, he is really active. He's been really active signing Jimmy Graham, signed Muhammad Wilkerson. They had to part ways with Jordy Nelson. So he's not afraid to make moves in his first offseason as a GM. And they need some help on defense. Aaron Rodgers being out exposed a lot of weaknesses on that team. The offense should be fine when he comes back, especially with Jimmy Graham. But the defense has a ton of holes. They got rid of Demarius Randall, trading him to the Browns in the offseason. So they need a ton of help at corner or safety. And so I think they could trade up for Minkah Fitzpatrick or Denzel Ward.
So I just got word from our producer in the control room. With the first pick of the NFL draft, the Cleveland Browns have selected Baker Mayfield.
There it is.
Wow. Quarterback from Oklahoma. Guys, this is a surprise pick for me. Unbelievable. He's such a fiery competitor, extremely accurate passer. The big plus with Baker Mayfield, obviously, is his accuracy. One of the most accurate passers we've seen in college football as of late. Threw for over 14,000 yards in his career with Oklahoma. And in many interviews leading up to this draft, he said that if Cleveland is going to take a chance on a guy, he wants it to be him so he can turn this franchise around and be that hero in Cleveland like LeBron James is for the Cavaliers. And now he just got his wish. Baker Mayfield just went #1 overall to the Browns.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't buy the rumors, to be honest. I thought it was smoke. I don't know why they would have been lying, because they had the #1 pick and complete control over who they wanted. But I mean, I thought Darnold was their guy. But the thing I do like about Baker is he is a really fiery competitor. Sometimes he takes it a little too far, obviously with the incident with Kansas. But when you look at that Ohio State game, planting the flag in the middle of their field, I really like that fire that he brings. And you bring that to a struggling franchise like the Browns, and he could turn it around. I talked about it with the Jets. You know, he could come in and change them. He could come in and do the same thing with the Cleveland Browns.
Look, Baker's a proven winner. We know that. He's been successful at every level in college. He's won a Heisman Trophy. That's great. I don't like this pick. If you're the Browns, my goodness. If you're looking for a pick that is risky, you're looking at Baker Mayfield. This guy, to me, looks like a Johnny Manziel clone as far as maturity is concerned. And then another thing, a lot of people will say, oh, Baker, you know, he's like Russell Wilson, one of those smaller guys, Drew Brees. Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, one of the reasons they've been able to succeed at a smaller height, they have huge hands, greater than 10-inch hand size. So Baker Mayfield's a 9.5 hand size. That's going to be difficult when you're handling the ball in a cold Cleveland. And wow, I'm shocked they went with the immaturity of Baker Mayfield in this draft with the first overall pick.
So how is this going to shake up now the rest of the draft? The quarterbacks that we still have in play, obviously Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, of course Mason Rudolph as well. Who do you guys think is going to be the next guy to go after Mayfield's already been selected first?
Well, for me, I think the New York Giants have a decision on their hands now. I think that they really like Sam Darnold, and they also have a need at running back, and Saquon Barkley is a great option there. So, I mean, I think with Darnold still on the board, that gives them a tough situation.
I agree with you. I think that they definitely have to look at Darnold. I still think that the Giants are going to go running back here. I think they're going to go Saquon Barkley, best overall talent. I think now it looks at the Jets. Who are the Jets going to take? Are they going to go for potential and look at a guy like Josh Allen? Or are they going to go and look at the steady quarterback out of USC? So you have to kind of look at that. I agree with you. Sam Darnold is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the draft. He reminds me a lot of Matt Ryan. He came out, there have been questions about interceptions. Matt Ryan had 19 interceptions his senior year of college. So you look at these guys. I like Sam Darnold. If they pick Sam Darnold, that's great. I think they're going to ride with Eli Manning this year and get the top talent and have him for the next 10 to 15 years. They're going running back.
Yeah, and people forget that they were a playoff team 2 seasons ago, and they were really close to. I mean, people expected them to be better than they were last year.
I think kind of keep it the same with Eli Manning, get him reps, and then once Manning becomes, you know, once he retires, goes off into the sunset. Well, actually, here we go. Oh, I just got word that a second-round pick is in, and the second-round pick, the Giants have gone with Saquon Barkley, running back of Penn State. Guys, like we said, not really much of a surprise here. Saquon Barkley is widely regarded as one of the best talents, truly of a generation. He's got no red flags, an absolute physical specimen, a complete player. He averaged 5.9 yards in 2017 on the ground. This is a guy, I like this pick for the Giants. Bright lights, big city. Not only that, you've got a guy who wants the bright lights and big city. He's already signed with Rock Nation. He's looking to up his game on social media when it comes to marketing and brand deals, so he gets it. He gets the game. To me, this is a smart pick. What do you guys think?
Slam dunk.
Yeah.
Slam dunk.
Yeah,
the obvious pick. And you were saying before the pick came in, you're wondering about, so are the Giants going to change up their offense, traditional passing offense, right?
Let's talk about that now that the pick's in.
Drew Brees, New Orleans Saints, traditional passing offense, right? Alvin Kamara comes in this year. Look, now they've got a back that can receive out of the backfield. I think that basically Saquon Barkley's going to come in and be that dual threat. That's the way the NFL's moving. He's going to be able to line up in the slot. He's running great routes. He's been running better routes in recent years. He's gotten better at receiving. He's a guy who led a lot of, he owns a lot of career records when it comes to Penn State, which we know is a vaunted program. He's going to come in, be a bruiser, dynamic. Dynamic is the word for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and you see in those highlights there, he has just an absolute great vision on the field, great cutting ability. It's just, he's a game changer. What New York will need to do, they need to fix their offensive line now. If they're going to invest that pick with Barkley, I mean, with Darnold you have to do it too, but you need an aggressive run-blocking offensive line because they've struggled with not having a lot of running backs, but it also, some of that responsibility is on the O-line too. And so, I'd look for them with their second-round pick, third-round pick, maybe load up on some offensive linemen to set Barkley up for success.
And it's like we talked about before, you're never going to completely overturn a football franchise with just one pick. There's so many pieces on the chessboard that you have to start thinking about in advance. I agree. You got to look at retooling that O-line. You got to look, I think, as well at getting some edge rushers in there. Now that Pierre-Paul is gone, he's not there anymore, you're going to need some speed off the end in order to continue to put pressure on opponents' offenses. So I'm with you guys. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the New York Giants do in these upcoming rounds. And now we've got pick number 3 coming up with the New York Jets. So off the board, we've got Baker Mayfield to the Browns. We've got Saquon Barkley now to the Giants. So likely Jets are going quarterback. We've talked a little bit about this already. You've got the security blanket almost that is Sam Darnold with his comfort level in the pocket. You've got a little bit of a riskier pick with Josh Allen. Which one of them do you guys think can handle the bright lights of New York City the best? Saquon seems like he's fit for it. Which one of these guys do you think can handle the pressure of New York City?
I'm going to go with neither of them. I'm going to go with Josh Rosen, the UCLA kid. Sam Darnold, also USC, played in LA and dealt with a big city. But I really like Josh Rosen's personality. A lot of coaches have mentioned, a lot of scouts have mentioned that he asks why too much and kind of, doesn't really trust his coaches from the beginning. I think that's a good thing. I think when you look at a lot of the top quarterbacks in history, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, they all command the line of scrimmage, and they know every in and out of that offense. And I think he wants to be the same way. He has that same kind of mental makeup, and he's used to the big city UCLA kid, so I think he's ready.
I could see Josh Rosen being the pick. I think he's one of these guys who's got that big personality like Connor said, and I think that some of the critiques of him have been very unfair. Why do we hate a guy that asks why? That doesn't really make sense to me. I like a guy that wants to know what's going on. There have been some questions about his character, about his leadership. I still think if you're sitting here with the Jets, I think you get the best quarterback available. That's Sam Darnold in my mind. The question is for me now, how is a guy like Sam Darnold, a Southern California kid, going to go and play in those New York winters? That's a question mark. How's the weather going to have an effect for a guy who already had fumble and interception issues in college? But again, like I mentioned before, I look at Sam Darnold as like a Matt Ryan clone. So I'm not too worried about it. I think Sam Darnold is the pick here.
For what it's worth, he did throw really well in the rain at his pro day.
Yeah, he did. So. He did. That might have been a saving grace.
That is very true. And this quarterback that the Jets are likely going to select is probably going to start from day one, right? Because you've got Josh McCown on the roster, who really is not known as a franchise quarterback by most standards. And you've got Teddy Two Gloves Bridgewater. Do you see any one of those guys starting to begin the season and then you transition into the quarterback pick? Or do you think the quarterback pick is going to start from day one?
So I think that you could see him start from day one. What they're going to be saying publicly is everyone's going to be competing. They're going to see how the preseason goes. Sam Darnold might not come in, if it's Sam Darnold or some other quarterback, might not come in until like midway through the season. I think they're going to give Teddy Bridgewater his reps. They're going to let Josh McCown lead the first team coming into the first preseason game. Eventually we'll see what's going to happen, but maybe early on, I don't think he's going to be named the starter after the draft, put it that way. He's going to have to earn it.
Yeah, and I mean, Teddy Bridgewater really hasn't played in 2 seasons. He's still young, and he was beloved in Minnesota. Obviously, they went out and got Kirk Cousins. But I think that whoever's picked here will have a chance to compete for the starting job week 1.
Got it. And what other holes do you guys think, as this draft continues to move forward, the Jets have to fill in order to be a contending team in their division?
I think the Jets need a lot of offense. They could use some receiver help. They could use some O-line help to protect whichever quarterback they take. I think their defense is all right. It's young. It's improving. Like I mentioned earlier, they have Jamal Adams, so I think they would need to get their quarterback some weapons.
I'm with Connor right there. I mean, every team could use a better pass rush. Every team could use better offensive line, defensive line, all up on the front. That's where the trenches is where the game starts. It's where the game's won. One little note on this quarterback, whoever is chosen, I know in New York people said Todd Bowles is on sort of like a short leash, if you will, or like he's on thin ice, one of those. And Todd Bowles, he's going to be tied to whoever this quarterback pick is. If this quarterback isn't a success, you can look for Todd Bowles' success to be tied to him in his job as well.
All right, guys, I'm getting news from our production room that with the 3rd pick, the New York Jets have selected Dan Comer's choice. That's right, Sam Darnold, USC quarterback. Sam Darnold has had an incredible career with USC. He is a franchise quarterback when it comes to the way that he carries himself. Over 7,000 career passing yards, 57 touchdowns, 22 interceptions. This guy has the makings, I think, to be one of the safer bets, obviously, in the draft. Probably one of your safer starting quarterbacks. Good move for the Jets. How are you guys feeling? I know you're probably pretty happy with this pick.
Great move for the Jets. He's a Rose Bowl champion. He's a stud. I mean, he's very, very good. He's got bigger hands than Baker Mayfield. He's got great pocket mobility. If you watch this guy in the 4th quarter of games, he's been very, very, very good. Clutch, we know it's not something you can measure necessarily, but he's been great. He's been great at closing games. The other thing, if you look at it, look at how the Pac-12 voted. He was all Pac-12 first team. Guy like Josh Rosen, second team. There's a reason, because when it came down to it, Sam Darnold outperformed the competition. I like this pick a lot for the Jets. I think they have the safest quarterback pick of the draft.
Yeah, when you look at Darnold, he's got that prototypical size you look for, unlike a Baker Mayfield and at pick number 1. But he's been working with Jordan Palmer in the offseason, and that's probably cleaned up some of his decision making. And they work a lot on NFL style plays, and so that should help ease his transition into the league and give him maybe a chance to cut down on those turnovers. Plus, he appears to be a great leader. He seems well liked by all of his teammates. He after flying back from a team visit, went and helped out Ronald Jones, his running back, at his pro day. He couldn't compete at the normal USC one that was in the rain because of a lingering injury. And so he's just that kind of guy that goes and he's no longer teammates with them, but he goes and just, selfless and helps them out. And that's the kind of, character you want to see from a franchise quarterback.
All right, guys, so the first 3 picks are in. The Cleveland Browns now have the 4th pick again. And to give us a little background on what the Browns might possibly do with this pick, we're going to toss it out to the guys, Nick and Eric at the big board. Guys, what are we thinking here? What are the Browns going to do with pick number 4?
All right, so let's go through and let's talk about the Browns in that 4th pick. They've already taken care of that QB, so we can kind of cover that up right there. They need cornerback, offensive tackle, wide receiver, defensive tackle. Some of these picks are going to be interested. Who do you think is going to be that number 4th pick?
Well, here's the thing. The funny thing about this pick is that the Browns probably won't be taking a player who fits these needs that we've kind of listed out here. The reason being, I think, is because they saw what the Philadelphia Eagles did in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots. Yeah. They beat them with pass rush, and so now Myles Garrett, Emmanuel Ogbah, joined by the pick, in my opinion, will be Bradley Chubb.
I have to agree with you there. I think Chubb has just got that speed on the outside. It's not that big banging type of running game that we used to see in the NFL anymore. It's a lot more speed. Chubb has that speed coming off the edge. He's going to be, put in the type of position where he can be utilized for the Browns. See if they can solidify that defense. Could have put a couple numbers on that W column for the Browns coming up this 2018 season. So should be interesting. We'll see who they pick. Guys, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick, Eric, for your guys' analysis. While y'all were breaking down their picks, we were whispering and chatting a little bit in here. Someone at this desk thinks that a trade is a brewing. Dan, you think a trade is coming up. Who is it and why?
I do think a trade is coming up. I think the Broncos are going to be offloading that 5th pick. Look at the Bills. There's still 2 top quarterbacks available, and Josh Allen and Josh Rosen. I think one of these guys is going to be off the board here pretty soon in a trade up by either the Bills or the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I prefer no trades in my mock drafts. And you've got bookends for your defense for the next decade.
Oh, absolutely. There's been so much hype, it seems, around Chubb. as we've started to talk about the draft. I mean, this guy, it seems to me, has some next level athletic ability. I know we were talking before that a lot of people are reminded of, obviously, Myles Garrett when they look at him, but he's almost a better football player, a pure player than Myles Garrett is. He still has that explosive athleticism. This past year, he had career highs in sacks and tackles, so I think he's put himself in an incredibly good position to get picked up here, possibly by the Cleveland Browns. And I mean, they have a lot of holes to fill, so to go with the best athlete, the best player on the board, and it happens to be a position that you need to fill, it makes sense to me. I'm buying it. I get it.
Yeah, I like it. He's also got NFL pedigree. His dad played UGA. He was a great player at UGA and then got drafted by the Patriots many years ago. I like Chubb here. Again, like Connor said, if you can get that two-headed monster, some of the most important positions in the NFL, get your pass rushers, get your quarterback, and now it looks like they're going to have solved those with the first 2 picks if they end up going defensive line here.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of drafts, Chubb could go number 1, and for the Browns to get him at 4, that's just fantastic.
Oh, it's a steal. It's a steal. We're getting now, I think, to the fun part of this draft where the early picks are in, the ones that we thought would happen have happened. Saquon Barkley has already been drafted by the Giants. You've already had Darnold go to the Jets. I think I'm with you guys. This is when the draft really starts to get interesting. This is when the bigger moves can be made that really surprise everybody this evening. And again, I can't believe we're going back to surprises here. That Baker Mayfield goes number 1. Did you guys see? I thought this was incredible. Did you guys see the social media post that he made?
Yes. Yeah, the Brett Favre, the jean shorts. And
How
Brett Favre
good was
came back.
that?
Yeah. It was great, but I mean, you're looking at a guy who, again, I think is not the guy you want at number 1. But still, I mean, it's a funny little social media thing. It was cool.
Locked up number 1 for him.
I think it might have. I think when Brett Favre tweeted back or commented back, like return the jorts, I felt like, okay, this guy might get the pick number 1, but even though there might not be any causation there, but I still don't like that pick. I don't like it at all. But you know what? Let's see how it goes. I remember a few years ago when Johnny Manziel was about to get drafted, he was calling the Browns GM and say, "Take me, I'm your guy. I want to bring Cleveland back to prominence." You know, aligning with guys like Drake. LeBron James was tweeting, "Oh, you're going to be like the football version." I've seen this before. It feels like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Things are just happening over again. I don't like this pick still.
Played like devil's advocate here, though. Oh, actually, I'm not going to play devil's advocate right now. I'm going to be the voice of God, because with the 4th overall pick, the Cleveland Browns have selected Denzel Ward, cornerback for Ohio State. This was a name that we did not talk about in our predictions for the Cleveland Browns, but Ward is known as one of the best athletic talents in this draft, possibly only behind Saquon Barkley. This guy can jump through the roof, is physical at cornerback, great on the run game, as we were talking about earlier. He has an incredibly high ceiling at cornerback. Obviously, you have Josh Jackson at cornerback, more of a ball hawk. Denzel, more of a physical player. I'm so interested by this pick. I personally didn't see this coming. I would love to get your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think this does make sense. They lost Joe Hayden recently last year, and they acquired Demarius Randall from the Packers in the Deshaun Kaiser trade, but they're going to move him to safety, which was his natural position in college. So they really do need elite talent at the corner position, and I think Denzel Ward is that. I think, like you mentioned, Saquon Barkley and him, they're the 2 top athletes in this class. Denzel Ward ran a 4.3 240, 39-inch vertical. He's great in man coverage. His footwork is unbelievable, and he's not a big guy. He's only 5'10", 5'11", maybe, but you look at what he does with his footwork, and he just stays on receivers. He does get he grabs a little bit, and that could draw some penalties at the next level, but he is a phenomenal talent. And so while it's not expected, I do like this pick.
Like Connor mentioned, speed, athleticism. I think it's a great pick. Like we said too, the Browns need skill players all over the ball. He's got some pretty good ball skills. I don't think he had a ton of interceptions this year at Ohio State. But again, you know, I'm surprised they didn't go with Bradley Chubb, but I think it's going to be a good pick overall. They play in a division with Ben Roethlisberger, an aging Ben Roethlisberger, an aging Joe Flacco. So I don't know if secondary was necessarily their primary need, and I don't know that he was the best player on the board. But like we've gone to before, if their draft room has him as their highest-ranked player and he fills a need, they're going to pick their guy. It surprises me, it surprises you, but that's their draft room.
That's a great point. That's a good point. And now I guess the question becomes, where is Chubb going to fall over these next couple of picks? I can't imagine that he's going to be on the board for much longer. No?
Yeah, I can't imagine he would be. In a lot of early mock drafts, before the Colts had traded their pick at number 3, he was linked to them in every single mock draft. And so they might end up getting him at 6, even though they traded down. They could trade down again, but he might fall in their lap. If you look at Denver, they have Von Miller on one side. They could put Bradley Chubb on the other. A situation like we were talking about with Myles Garrett and Chubb. So, I mean, either of those two spots could be potential landing points.
I'm with Connor on this one. You could get the same two-headed monster that we talked about earlier. The other thing is, too, I would be shocked if he did fall past 6. I think the Colts want one of those pass rushers. The other thing is, though, they're going to be getting an Andrew Luck back, and they're going to need someone they're going to want to protect their investment who's been injured for the past year and a half. So they might go Quentin Nelson at 6. So it's really, the board could go anywhere at this point. I'm not sure if I see a trade anymore, because maybe Broncos are saying, wow, we didn't expect Chubb to be here. He's there. Let's jump on him and get that two-headed monster.
And then the Bills wouldn't necessarily have to trade up for a quarterback if the Broncos go with Chubb. And the Colts are not looking for a quarterback. They've got their future and present right now with Andrew Luck. So it looks to me like a quarterback could still be on the board as we move into the 7, 8, and 9 picks, which I find to be incredibly interesting. Is there a chance? I mean, I know that in Darren Zaslow's incredible video package on the way, very nice editing, buddy. I know that we heard one fan say that Chubb is going to go to the Bears. They're the 8th pick. Is that wishful thinking? Is there a possibility? I mean, if Broncos go quarterback and the Colts want to protect Andrew Luck and they go with an offensive lineman like Quentin Nelson, that now leaves 1 pick before the Chicago Bears come up. Is there any chance, I mean, we're here in Chicago, so we got to talk about it. Is there any chance that Chubb makes it down to the Bears pick?
That fan's looking a bit smarter now, but you think Tampa's got to take him because they have Gerald McCoy on the inside, pairing Chubb with McCoy. I mean, it all starts with pass rush. You can have elite corners, but if they're covering for 5, 6 seconds, I mean, it's game over in this league, and you need to get to the quarterback, and it's a premier position. So I can't imagine that Chubb is on the board too much longer.
I'm with you a little bit here, but I think the Bucs, they've been tied to Derwin James. It looks like they're going to go with James at the safety position. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Tampa that ended up getting Pierre-Paul? Is that correct?
Let me see. Yes. So
okay,
Tampa I'm looking through my giant mess of notes here. And yeah, they did get Jason Pierre-Paul.
They've got Pierre-Paul, they've got McCoy. I think they're going to be set with their pass rush this year. I don't necessarily think they go Chubb. So he could potentially fall to the Bears. That'd be shocking. Quite a smart fan if that happens. Or maybe lucky. I think lucky might be. Chicago would be lucky if Chubb fell to them at 8.
Right, it's like the person who in their March Madness bracket is like, man, I love those Loyola Ramblers and Sister Jean. They're going to the Final Four. Talk about the luck Chicago would have if Chubb ends up falling to them between the Sister Jean, March Madness mania, and now this. That would really be something. And here's a stat that I would like to bring up because you mentioned the Bucs are likely going to go with Derwin as a safety. They were ranked last year in total passing yards allowed. They ranked 31st in net yards per pass attempt by an opponent at 7.1. They need help when it comes to their pass defense. So I agree with you there. I think Derwin James makes the most logical sense for the Bucs moving forward.
Right, yeah, and they took Vernon Hargreaves out of Florida a few years ago. He was supposed to be a can't-miss guy. Hasn't really panned out the way they thought he would. He's been solid, but he hasn't been a superstar. I think they go Derwin James with that pick at 7.
Yeah, Hargreaves he's struggled with his size. He's a smaller corner, and it worked for him in college, but he just hasn't been an elite talent yet.
Right.
All right, guys, I'm getting word that the 5th pick of this draft is about to happen. It looks like the Denver Broncos, so no trade. The Denver Broncos have selected Bradley Chubb, defensive end of North Carolina State. I can't say we're too surprised here. Chubb has been one of the top players in this draft from day one, the best defensive talent in the draft. He holds multiple defensive records at North Carolina State University. The biggest thing that a lot of scouts see in him is that speed off the edge. As our incredible big board analyst Nick Mantis already mentioned, that speed is what a lot of teams are looking for in the draft. So now The Broncos have a two-headed monster, gentlemen, between Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. This is pretty exciting if you're a fan in the Mile High City.
It's a good pick. It's a great pick. He's got great bend off the edge, very good technique. He's quick. He's strong. He's also shown that he can drop into coverage a little bit and play maybe that outside linebacker position if he needs to. I think he's a 4-down guy. He's got great, or 3-down guy. He's got a great motor, and he's shown it at NC State. Came in as a 3-star prospect, worked, broke records, and has been a superstar in college.
Yeah, if you told John Elway that he could sit at 5 and get Bradley Chubb, I think he'd be happy with that draft.
Oh, 100%.
And you've got Case Keenum. I guess they figured they'll stick with him. He had a good year in Minnesota last year. So I think they're very pleased with the way this has played out. The one thing I do really enjoy about Bradley Chubb, he's made a habit of taking opposing quarterbacks' towels from them and just kind of throwing them on the ground. In his mind, he's rattling them, getting under their skin, and taking their mind away from the game. I like those little mind games. He's a great talent, physically, and I guess he's got the mental side of the game going for him, too.
Absolutely. I feel like that's kind of half the equation when you get to the NFL, right? Because Rob and Jake Rietma are joining me in the studio for the next 5 picks. So stay tuned here at Medill Sports Talk.
In every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for the sweet victories, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern University, we are pioneering innovation and achieving excellence across every imaginable discipline. Northwestern University, the possibilities are endless.
Hold on, we're coming back.
I like the personal side of it and that sort of.
Welcome back to Medill Sports Talk. All right, so we've made it through the first 5 picks, and to hear about the next 6, I've got with me on the panel Darren Zaslow and Jake Rietma, 2 men who I've had a lot of fun with over the past couple of quarters talking sports here at MST Boys.
We promise we're going to stay civil this time.
We're going to stay civil.
Yes.
Okay.
I know in the past, we've brought the boxing gloves out, but I promise we'll be on our best behavior.
Simmer down, pinky promise.
Oh man, you're going to make me pinky promise and
fine,
everything?
Okay, fine,
come on now.
I love it. Within the first 15 seconds that you were on air, we're already harking back to kindergarten pinky promises. So let's talk about what's happened so far. I would love to hear what you guys have thought, because obviously you've been watching in the control. Actually, before I ask you that question, this is why we do it live, ladies and gentlemen. I am getting word that with the 6th pick, the Indianapolis Colts have selected Quentin Nelson, guard from Notre Dame. I don't think we're that surprised. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not that surprised here. Quentin Nelson was widely regarded as the best offensive line talent pretty much of his generation. Here's a fun stat for you guys. Within the past 20 years, there hasn't been a guard that went in the first 5. He missed it by just a pick, but I think it's still a huge compliment for him to go 6th. He was voted by his teammates the most valuable player of Notre Dame this year. This is a guy who not only has the size and strength to completely morph an offensive line and its blocking capabilities, but he's smart. He understands the game, and he's a fundamentally sound player. So, now we're going to go to Olivia Reiner back in the studio. She's got an interesting update for us after the 6th pick. Olivia, what have you got?
All right, thanks, Jordan. So we've got picks 7 through 10 on deck, and they've all got one thing in common. So as you can see, we've decided there's no real desperate need for quarterbacks with these next picks. Of course, you could debate us on that, but there's a real chance that a team with a more urgent desire could trade up here. Teams like Miami, Arizona, and Buffalo fit that description. Buffalo has 2 first-round picks later on with number 12 and 22. They're the most likely to trade up for a QB now. Arizona is starting Sam Bradford, who's backed up by Mike Glennon, and would certainly benefit from having someone to groom. In Miami, Ryan Tannehill is coming off of a major knee injury, and Adam Gase might also be interested in a top QB. We'll see what ends up happening. Jordan, Darren, Jake, back to you guys.
Thanks, Olivia. That's right, we are going to see what is happening here. There have been a lot of surprises so far early in the draft. Again, I just love to hear what you guys have thought of the draft thus far in the evening. Darren, what's going through your mind?
The Baker Mayfield pick is really surprising to me. I mean, you constantly hear about Sam Darnold, you constantly hear about Josh Allen, and you hear all the Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel comparisons, which Dan brought up earlier on this evening. I think it's a valid point. And again, you kind of hear the questioning of his character. Is he big enough? Can he see over the line? Listen, it's a valid point.
It's a valid question, yeah.
He's incredibly athletic. And you were a former football player in college. That's the foundation of a player. How athletic are you? And of course, Baker Mayfield, one of those guys.
Right, love him or hate him, the guy brings an it factor that's his guys on the team rally around. And you went on the offensive side of things, Jordan. For me, I'm going on the defensive side of things. Talk about Bradley Chubb, a generational type talent, and he's not the first defensive player taken. I don't think anyone saw Denzel Ward jumping up to that number 4 spot. We're talking about a guy who didn't lead his own conference in interceptions, not just the NCAA as a whole, but the first cornerback taken didn't even lead the Big Ten in interceptions. That was Josh Jackson, who led all of FBS with 8 interceptions.
All right, guys, I'm going to have to interrupt you here. I'm so sorry, because I just got word that there has been a trade. Where's our dramatic music from the control room? No, there's been a trade. The Bills have traded up for the Buccaneers spot, so they now have our next pick on the draft board, which means I got to reshuffle my notes once again. Guys, what do you make of this move? To me, it seems like they want to make sure that the quarterback of their choosing is on the board. They don't want to let it fall much further. What are your first reactions, Jake?
I think you nailed it right on the head there. They want to ensure that they're getting the quarterback that they believe can be that franchise player, making the investment as a first rounder. You've got to get somebody that can be the focal point of your franchise for years and years to come. Otherwise, GM, head coach, front office, bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point here, and for Buffalo, we've seen some shaky things going on with the quarterback position. Tyrod Taylor now going over to Cleveland, so of course that's the vacated spot that needs to be filled at this point. And again, we've seen other moves in the skill position area. Sammy Watkins has departed from Buffalo. This is going to be a real new look offense.
And who's going to lead that new look offense for you guys? I think it's safe to say, although Denzel Ward was a surprise, so nothing is off limits here. Safe to say they're going to go with a quarterback, right? That's their most immediate need. Who do you think, based on the quarterbacks left on the board, is going to be leading the Buffalo Bills offense in the rain, sleet, and snow when we get to next year?
I'll go with Josh Rosen. I mean, here's a guy that's so fundamentally sound. It's such a work of art to see his quick feet in the pocket, to see him with every single throw, the mechanics, and he can make every single throw. He can beat you outside the numbers, which is something you have to be able to do in the NFL, and that's where you see guys like Josh Rosen that can make every single throw separate themselves. I think if the Bills do in fact take Josh Rosen, they've got themselves a franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future.
We don't often agree, but Jake.
All right.
I agree with Josh Rosen. Again, we've talked about this. This, in my mind, was the second best quarterback entering this draft, right behind Sam Darnold, in my humble opinion. Had a very good combine. And also, when you look at where these players played in college, Josh Rosen at UCLA in the Pac-12, that's really good quality football. So some of these numbers, maybe you play in the Mountain West, maybe you play in a smaller conference, just saying.
Sure.
Those numbers are inflated a little bit based off the competition. Josh Rosen, we've seen it in the combine. We've seen it in college. Jake, I'm with you here.
I know this is shocking. I mean, we've had breaking news all night, but this is more breaking news. But to your point, though, Josh Allen's numbers being a little bit inflated, his numbers aren't even that great being in the Mountain West, or rather, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Mountain West Conference playing for Wyoming. But point being, he still didn't complete 60% of his passes. That's a number that is alarming, and I think that's why you're seeing him fall right now.
How far do you think he is going to fall? It seems like obviously he's been trending downward. How much longer is it going to be before that man hears his name called?
Could be one of those guys that you think is going to be a top 3 pick, then slides all the way maybe to the middle of this first round, maybe between 12 and 15.
I'm reminded of Aaron Rodgers, which things worked out okay for him.
I'm so sorry, I'm going to interrupt you again, but we've got the pick in, and the Buffalo Bills select Josh Allen.
Oh, no!
Quarterback out of Wyoming. Now, to be fair to Josh Allen, because we've talked about the downsides to his game, I think you can make the argument, and it's a pretty fair argument, that there is no one in the draft right now with a bigger cannon than Josh Allen. When it comes to his height, his mobility, his arm, this guy is probably the highest ceiling quarterback that we have in the draft. He can throw on the run. He's got a pretty decent pocket presence. And of course, the long balls for him, I think, are going to make a lot of teams very excited. So, guys, this is surprising.
Hey, before we get into it, I just think that's a sign that we need to never agree on anything.
No, clearly it's not working out for you guys.
The first time we agree on something, we're completely wrong. So if you want, Jordan, if you want to kick us off the set right now, I completely understand.
Oh, I wouldn't do that to you guys.
I appreciate that.
I have too much fun. This is too much fun for me. I would never do that.
But it only took 30 seconds to put the foot in the mouth. I love everything about Josh Allen. You know, great guy. Yeah.
I will say this, Jordan. I think you bring up an interesting point here about the offense now changing, right? This offense has been based around Tyrod Taylor, and a lot of the weight has been on the shoulders of LaShawn McCoy in the past, right? So maybe this is a pick that can kind of give this Bills offense a little bit of a new identity. And look at the new highlight reel out in front of you. Josh Allen, a guy, has that strong arm, can step up in the pocket, make those passes sideline to sideline, right, like you see right there. So a new look offense, it has to be for this Bills team with Josh Allen.
I think that's a great point. How do you guys foresee the play calling change when it comes to this offense? Are we going to see an offense built more about staying in the pocket, delivering those long passes downfield? Or are we still going to see a lot of speed along the edges? If you're a Buffalo Bills fan and you're watching TV at the start,
which LaShawn McCoy will really help out Josh Allen there.
All right, guys, so that was the 7th pick of this draft. With the 8th pick, we've got our Chicago Bears, the hometown heroes, on the board. And to give us the latest update on who they think the Bears are going to go with is once again the magnificent Nick Mantis and the incredible Eric Alcantor at the big board. Guys, what have you got for?
Thank you, guys. I mean, it's all night of just compliments around here. You guys are doing great up there on the desk. Keep up all the great work. So we're going to talk Bears here in Chicago. We got some interesting picks. Now, I think they would definitely want to quit out of Notre Dame. They don't have that option right now. Who we see get some possible picks more on the defensive side. Obviously, Roquan Smith was a standout of that national championship game. You think they're going to take him? Maybe some other ones we have up here?
Yeah, I think that Roquan Smith is the best available player that fits a need that they have. That said, Tremaine Edmunds is only 19. So he'll be turning 20 just in a week or so here. But that's a player you can really develop and kind of mold into your system. And then, Harold Landry's available as well, too, if they want to get a pass rushing partner. On that front, I think it's a great move for them as well. I think they really just need to add to that defensive line and continue to build and get their quarterback a little less pressure going forward.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that's going to help them out, just because they know that Trubisky was pressured a lot this last year. I think that on the defensive side, if he could do a little bit better when he's throwing the ball, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they can have that offensive standout when it comes to Trubisky. But on the defensive side, as we were discussing, Harold Landry out of Boston College, me originally being from Brookline, Massachusetts, right down in the 617. How you doing, Mom and Dad? Good to see you. We know about Landry. We know the speed he's coming off the edge. But as we were saying earlier, that smaller rushers that have a lot more speed. It's a smaller game now. It's all about making sure you can play out there in a zone maybe. So I'm going to say maybe Landry with the Bears here, kind of solidify that defense. Guys, back to you. We'll see what they do.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to keep the compliment train here going. Eric, I think I saw you earlier in class this week working on those graphics. They look phenomenal, my friend. So before we continue the conversation about the Bears, let's step back a little bit. Let's talk about the trade details that just went down with the Bills. So the Bills, because of this trade, now get the number 12, 53, and 56 overall picks in this year's draft in exchange for the number 7 and 255th picks. So that's the details. You guys think it was worth it to land, hopefully for the Buffalo fans, the quarterback of their future?
I mean, we were talking about how Buffalo's offense is going to change now. I mean, I think it's going to be no more check down Tyrod Taylor. It's going to be no more Tyrod Taylor scrambling out of the pocket and finding Charles Clay over the middle for 8 yards. I think this actually opens up the playbook. I think this gives Josh Allen a chance to throw the ball down the field, to take some chances, let him step up in the pocket and make some plays. I actually don't think that LaShawn McCoy will have as much on his shoulders now, because this team's going to start going deeper. It's going to start making the secondary be a little more honest and give the defense some different looks.
I am going to stick to my guns. I know I said I like Josh Rosen better. I'm going to stick with that. And I really question if this trade is going to be worth it. Of course, time will tell, and more than likely Josh Allen will go on to be much better than Josh Rosen. But I think I'm going to actually stick to my guns here. And in this draft, with the different quarterbacks that were available, I think the unpredictable nature, you see that there wasn't one clear-cut best quarterback in this draft. So to give up in a trade to move up to get Josh Allen, I don't know if that was necessarily the best decision.
Hey,
but time will tell.
Fair enough. And I've just gotten word that with the 8th pick, Chicago Bears have selected Roquan Smith, linebacker out of Georgia. I don't think there's really much of a surprise here. Roquan Smith is widely regarded as the best linebacker in this draft. Coming out of Georgia, he's a little bit undersized, a lot of scouts say, but he makes up for that with speed, quickness, and mental toughness. This guy has been all over the field for the Georgia Bulldogs throughout their incredible run in last season. And as we know and love, the Chicago Bears traditionally are linebacker university, right? Between Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, Brian Urlacher. I mean, for me, it seems to me like this is kind of a mirror Mike Singletary, right? If you want to draw that comparison, Singletary was regarded as undersized. Look at the incredible talent he turned out to be. I'm sure that Bears fans are wildly hopeful that that's going to be the same for Roquan Smith.
It's defensive revamping at its finest here for a Bears defense that really was not that bad last year. Finished 10th in the NFL, giving up 319 yards per game. This is actually a pretty good defense, at least in terms of yards given up per game. Now you add a guy like Roquan Smith, who you talked about, those tackles for losses, who can stop opposing rushing games. I think it's a good pick.
I love the pick as well, and it's no secret he's one of the best, if not the best linebacker in this draft. But here's what I love about Roquan Smith. He can be a 3-down linebacker. What I mean by that, he can play on first down, second down, and then if you need to bring a nickel or dime package in on that 3rd and long play, Roquan Smith is versatile enough. He can cover sideline to sideline to be that linebacker, even on 3rd and long in a nickel or dime package. A truly versatile talent out of the University of Georgia.
We were talking about maybe Mike McGlinchey going from Notre Dame to this Bears team to help.
Which wouldn't have been a bad pick.
To help create some running lanes for, you can make the argument, the best two-headed monster backfield in the NFL with Jordan Howard, with Tariq Cohen, help them find some running lanes. But instead they go onto the defensive side of the ball. Again, I agree with you. Good move.
All right, so the Bears pick is in. Let's talk about the next pick that's coming up with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, obviously, the 49ers seems like they just got their quarterback of the future with Jimmy G, which makes me happy. I'm incredibly happy for that handsome man, but that still means that the 49ers need an edge rusher. They need some help on the offensive line. Where do you guys think they're going to go with this next pick, the 9th pick in this draft?
Again, this offseason has just been so big in the NFL. So many moves, right? Richard Sherman, you talked about it. Jerick McKinnon, also a running back, comes over from Minnesota, now finds himself in the backfield with San Francisco with Carlos Hyde now gone. So, a new look team. Again, you could go to Mike McGlinchey, that offensive tackle that we talked about out of Notre Dame, who could help this offensive line and protect Jimmy G. That probably at the end of the day is what you need. Protection for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, the fact that he's still on the board, another versatile guy that can play a multitude of positions in that defensive secondary. And let's face it, this San Francisco defense last year was abysmal. Any help that they can get on the defensive end, especially from a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's got experience at the nation's top program, made so many plays for Alabama, and I think seeing him in a San Francisco uniform is just a guy you can't pass up on.
Oh, I think that's a very, very good point. It seems to me like the 49ers, you really can't go wrong with this pick because you're either going to plug up, Darren, like you said, that offensive line, give some protection to Jimmy G in the pocket, or you're going to go to the defensive side of the ball, and there's still a lot of great picks out there. And one thing that I would like to throw out too, you mentioned that Minkah is still on the board. Tremaine Edmonds, from Virginia Tech is still on the board. He is an absolutely incredible linebacker talent. Talk about getting someone who could help you with your pass rush as well.
I'm so glad you said that because on my way here, I was thinking about coming out and saying I like Tremaine Edmonds a little bit more than Roquan Smith, but I did not. But here's why I love Tremaine Edmonds.
Why is that?
19 years old, folks. That's right. He is 19. He's like the clay, and that defensive coaching staff, wherever he goes, can mold him in to be a phenomenal player in this league. Another guy that can play linebacker, yes, but also can be a pass rusher off the edge. Tremaine Edmonds is going to be a very, very good fit for whoever lands him in the first round.
Another big move that we haven't talked about with San Francisco that was made in the offseason, they found their center of the future with Weston Richburg signed to a 5-year deal. So we talked about maybe Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame being picked with this one. If you bolster that offensive line too, that's another thing to look at.
Hey Darren, you just mentioned Mike McGlinchey. I'm going to get to say his name again because he is the 9th overall pick of the San Francisco 49ers. That's right, Mike McGlinchey, offensive tackle at Notre Dame. It was widely known that he was probably the best talent at the offensive tackle position in this draft. I mean, if you're the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, how thrilled do you have to be that not only do you have 2 picks go within the top 10, but you have 2 picks that go within the top 10 on the offensive line. I think that's a pretty cool thing. McGlinchey was widely known for his absolutely incredible size, great blocking ability. I think that he is going to be the linchpin now for this O-line. You just mentioned they got the center of their future. Did they just get the offensive tackle of their future? Is Jimmy G now throwing behind this moat and he's going to have all this time in the pocket? I don't know. We'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, especially for a below-average rushing attack last year that rushed for 104 yards per game. That was number 21 in the NFL. So again, if they're trying to figure out ways to improve their rushing attack with the likes of Jerick McKinnon now that Carlos Hyde is gone, it's a good move.
Hey, we know how much Darren loves to sing on this show. I'm surprised you haven't started singing cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame. Wake up. But seriously, does anybody follow Mike Golick Jr. on Twitter right now? Because I'm sure he is just going off. He has been the biggest fan of Notre Dame offensive linemen since he graduated, and rightfully so. I mean, this was a program that had success, and it all started up front, something they took pride in, and I'm excited to see what type of career both of these guys are going to have in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, and they need to get back to their winning ways, right? The last time this team was making the playoffs consistently, which was a real force in the NFC, to the likes of Alex Smith under center, right? So they're trying to build the foundation on that offensive line.
And you think this is a good pick? We can all agree? Solid
pick? It's a good pick, but Darren was right and I was wrong. So for that reason, I'm going to have to hear the end of it for I don't know how long, you know?
It's a good one.
Oh my God. Wait, I just got another piece of interesting word. That the Raiders have just traded to the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh.
Gentlemen, that is the second trade of our draft tonight. That now means that the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. Walk me through this pick. We talked before about Arizona needing their quarterback of the future. Is this the move that's going to get them that quarterback of the future?
I swung and missed the first time with Josh Rosen, but I'm just going to repeat everything I said.
There you go.
They are going to get Josh Rosen, a phenomenal quarterback, and the Arizona Cardinals, after missing out on both Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes last year, they're not going to make that mistake twice. They're going with Josh Rosen.
Another new identity. It's got to be Josh Rosen. Again, I think Cardinals fans have seen enough of Carson Palmer, you know, Drew Stanton, right? Some of these guys,
they're
right in the Big Ten. The point is
Michigan State, but from the state of Michigan.
Right,
yes,
right. There you go. but that's what they need, is that they need a new identity. And I think, again, like we talked about, Rosen could certainly be that guy for them.
And the Oakland Raiders are not looking for the quarterback of their future because obviously they have Carr, who's one of the best young talents in this league, under center. So this trade makes sense for them. How? If you're a Raiders fan, why are you feeling okay that they just traded down?
Well, obviously you can talk about John Gruden being at the helm now and it being a new era in Oakland. And for that reason, it kind of speaks to the testament of how deep this draft is at other positions besides the quarterback position, which we've already seen a lot of so far in this draft. And I think if you ask the majority of Oakland fans, whatever John Gruden and that front office decide to do, they're going to be on board with, because there's so much momentum around the signing of John Gruden as the head coach.
And at the end of the day as well, you want to draft a player that's going to make a difference. And if you have that spot where you feel like the player you pick will not make that immediate difference, then why don't you get something in return for it? You talked about Derek Carr. That's your guy for the Oakland Raiders. Make your picks worth it. And maybe Oakland just didn't feel that way at this point in the draft.
No, I think that that's a very fair point. I think they probably still see that pick that they want on the board, and if they're projecting out a couple of picks in advance, looking at what these other teams need, they probably understand that that pick isn't necessarily going to come up. So for them, I think it's a smart move. For the Cardinals, to me, I agree with you guys. It seems like a smart move in order to secure that quarterback of the future, because we're talking about rebuilding franchises from the ground up, right? The Cardinals haven't been in that Super Bowl until since Kurt Warner was under center for them, and obviously they need to get that franchise quarterback back. So, I've just gotten word about the number 10 pick in this NFL draft. And with the 10th pick, the Arizona Cardinals, it seems, have selected Josh Rosen, according to rumors. It's not official yet. I may have jumped the gun on that one.
If it's not Josh Rosen, you can actually kick me out this time, because that would be 2 strikes, you know, and I would be out of here, because I have been all in on Josh Rosen.
I'll walk out the door with you, because that was a major no-no, and
but
I
it
apologize.
is a 3 strikes, you're out world. I'm sure you're a good 2-strike hitter.
Don't give me that much credit, but fool me once, isn't it? Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So that would essentially be the second time I would be fooled. So.
Interesting move, though. Again, if they do go with that quarterback spot, Arizona with the 3rd worst rushing attack last year.
Right.
So when you look at numbers like that and you see these teams in the bottom quartile, if you will, of the NFL, and you say, well, their running game wasn't that good. Well, maybe there was just not enough passing as well that put too much pressure on the running attack. So again, just kind of something to look at here. This is also a team that struggled running the football. So we could potentially see a running back. I don't think that's what it would be, but wouldn't be surprised if that's a shocker way that they went.
And Larry Fitzgerald is still in the league. What a luxury for a rookie quarterback to be able to learn and grow from a veteran like Larry Fitzgerald at the wide receiver position.
Oh, and he's such a good locker room leader, too.
Absolutely.
I think that if you bring in a young quarterback who can get mentored and groomed from a guy who has obviously seen all the snaps that Larry Fitzgerald has, I think you could have a potential franchise quarterback on your hands. I think it's going to be interesting with these Cardinals, you guys. I think it's going to be very interesting. How else do they need to retool this team, though, in order to become competitors? Because like we've said so often tonight, it's not a one pick and you're in the Super Bowl kind of a draft.
It's an interesting division that they're in, and I think you make a good point, because whenever I see the NFC West, I see defense, right? I see the Legion of Boom with Seattle, which you don't see anymore, right? So this is a changing identity of the NFC West as well. So maybe perhaps a look on the defensive side of the ball, because this division, I don't know what I'm going to get from this division. Is Seattle going to be a contender? Is Arizona going to be a contender? The list goes on and on here, but maybe defense could be an area they decide to look at. Could be the best defense if they build it the right way in that division.
You make a great point about Seattle, because how many times throughout the course of last season was Seattle deadlocked in this tight game and they just had to count on Russell Wilson to make a play late. So I think gone are the days where Seattle had established themselves as the best team in that division, and I see that as an opportunity for Arizona to take this first-round pick and become the front-runner in that division.
And it's another new quarterback in that division. Now you got San Francisco. Okay,
you say another new quarterback in that division. I just got word officially now, though, with the number 10 pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Josh Rosen, quarterback from UCLA. And that is good news for a number of reasons. One, it's great news because Josh Rosen is a great quarterback. 2, it's great news because that means Jake Riepma and I get to stay in the studio for at least a little bit longer. I like this pick. Josh Rosen is an incredibly solid quarterback. He could come into the NFL day one, start making a difference, not just because of his arm, but also because of his intelligence. He understands the game. He knows what needs to be done. And that is going to bring us to commercial. That was our next 5 picks. That went by incredibly quickly. And we're going to cut to a commercial break then. So that means we're going to be back with a lot more analysis and a lot more picks still to come. We'll be seeing you gentlemen later on in the show. But for now, we're going to send you to a commercial break where Northwestern is going to paint your YouTube screen purple.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
All right, guys, we are back after the commercial break. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. Obviously, there's plenty of talent still up for grabs with these next 5 picks, and one position that some of these teams are looking to bolster is the quarterback position. And Olivia Reiner has some updates for us, possibly about this, possibly about some other things in the studio about the next 5 picks. Olivia, what are your updates? What do you got for us?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Jordan. I believe cornerback is going to be a big focus for the remainder of the draft for this team, for these teams. But mainly, I'm thinking about Green Bay and Miami. Now, the Packers certainly played their hand when they bid on Chicago's Kyle Fuller. That didn't work out. The Bears were able to lock him down. So Green Bay, they're definitely in the market this year. They drafted a cornerback last year with their top pick of the draft in Kevin King, but they still need to upgrade that spot. This could be their opportunity to do so. One big name here is Florida State's Derwin James. So it may be cornerback o'clock here. We'll see how those GMs are feeling in just a few moments. Back to you guys on the desk.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Olivia. You mentioned cornerbacks. Cornerbacks are a much-needed position for 4 of the teams that came up on that graphic. So that's definitely something we're going to be looking forward to in the next couple of picks. Thank you so much for the update. And guys, we now have Connor Jan and Dan Comer back on the desk with me. Dan, you pulled out the mystical ball tonight and were able to see both of those trades. You got to be patting yourself on the back, my friend. What do you think about what just happened?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm an ESPN insider, so
yes.
No. But, I mean, it made sense, right? We had some quarterbacks available. We had some teams that needed quarterbacks. I thought they were going to trade up. They did. We look at Arizona going up to get their guy. And people in the newsroom were asking, well, you know, he could have fallen. Why did they trade up? He could have got him at 13. You never know what team is going to move up in ahead of you. And so if you see a guy that you like, trade up, pick. Don't be the team that didn't trade up and doesn't end up with a guy that you like.
Yeah, and what set up those trades was Denver going Bradley Chubb. at 5. If they go Allen or Rosen at quarterback there, then you don't see that happen. So you got 2 quarterbacks available. They've made their move.
All right, guys, it looks like the 11th pick of the draft is official. And the Miami Dolphins take Minkah Fitzpatrick, defensive back for Alabama. I'm a big fan of this pick. Minkah Fitzpatrick is one of those rare talents on safety, a disciple of Nick Saban, extremely smart, incredibly aware when he's on the field. He was the Jim Thorpe Award winner this year, had, I believe, eight interceptions over the course of the season. This is a guy who could do a little bit of everything. He's disciplined, plays fundamentally sound football, and if you're looking to start to retool your defense, I think this is a great move. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's going to be a Miami Dolphin.
Yeah, I don't think that Miami expected Minkah to maybe fall to him. They would love to have him on their team. He's experienced. He made 10 starts for Alabama as a freshman. So most people don't do that at Alabama. He's really talented, really great athlete, just good speed, good quickness, good vertical, good ball skills. He's got it all, and he could have been a top 5 pick realistically, and he falls to 11 at Miami.
Coming into the draft, Minkah was a guy that people said was a top 5 player. The questions were, is he a tweener? What position is he going to play? Is he going to play corner? Is he going to play safety? He's a guy that reminds me a lot of Tyrann Mathieu. Also, maybe a little bit last year, Jabril Peppers, but I think he's a little bit more Tyrann Mathieu than he is Jabril Peppers. I think he's going to come in and get some really good playing time. I was surprised that he was available as well. If he wasn't, I saw them going inside D-line here to replace Ndamukong Suh, who they lost in the offseason. But Minkah Fitzpatrick seems like a safe pick if they can figure out where he's going to play.
That's a great point, if they can figure out where he's going to play. The good news for them is that he is such a versatile player that I think you can put him almost anywhere and he's going to make a difference. How do you guys see this Miami Dolphins team starting to evolve now that we are, can I say hopefully, even though he's a Vanderbilt Commodore, in the post-Jake Cutler era? How is this team going to shape up looking into next season? Ryan Tannehill, their supposed franchise quarterback, is going to be back. Now you add Fitzpatrick. What are your thoughts on the Dolphins moving into this season?
Well, a lot of pre-draft reports came out saying that they were looking for a quarterback, and Ryan Tannehill was their guy. They made the playoffs 2 seasons ago, and he got hurt in camp before last season. And I mean, if he doesn't do that, they could have been a much more competitive team. They have shipped off a lot of talent. They shipped off Jarvis Landry to the Browns. They got rid of Jay Ajayi mid-season last year, and Ndamukong Suh is no longer with the team. So they do have a lot of playmakers to fill in, or they need a lot of playmakers to fill in, and Minkah Fitzpatrick is one of those guys for sure.
You play in a division with Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. That's really the team that you're worried about, and I think that you address your defense here smart. They still, like you said, Jordan, you mentioned supposedly, the franchise quarterback. I think that's a great way to put it. Ryan Tannehill hasn't been super consistent, and injuries have plagued him early on in his career. We'll see if he can come back and really assert himself as the guy so that next year there aren't whispers about, is Miami going to take a quarterback?
I think that's a great point, and it seems to make a lot of sense to me too to go with the safety in this position because the Dolphins were 30th last year in takeaways on defense. They only had 29 for the entire year. So now that the Dolphins are off the board, they've made their pick, they've made their investment in Minkah Fitzpatrick. What do you guys see the Tampa Bay Bucks doing with this next pick? Of course, remember, this used to be the Buffalo Bills pick originally until they traded up to get their quarterback. Where do you guys see the Bucks going with this number 12 pick?
The Bucks made a great move. I think at 7 they would have gone Derwin James. At 12, they're going to go Derwin James. And we'll see back-to-back safeties. James is another guy. He can kind of play all over the field. He did that at FSU. He missed a lot of the 2016 season with a knee injury, but other than that, he is a dynamic playmaker. This past season, he showed that he has the athleticism. He tested pretty well at the combine. So he's a dynamic playmaker that can fly all over the field for you.
Bucks ranked dead last in pass defense last year, 32nd overall. They're playing in a division with Cam Newton, Matt Ryan. I mean, let's look at this. Drew Brees. They need to improve their secondary if they're going to compete. They have to win those division games. They go with a guy here, Derwin James, safe pick, athletic. A guy like Connor mentioned was probably their guy at 7, and I think there are some happy business suits in the Bucks draft room this evening.
Yeah, it seems to me like secondary defense is going to be the name of the game when it comes to these next couple of picks, because I'm sure that some cornerbacks are going to start to get taken off the draft board. Josh Jackson, the ball hawk out of Iowa, is still on the board. Derwin James, like you guys have mentioned, is still on the board. So if you're a fan of really good defense, I think you're going to love these next couple of picks. Now, one thing that I want to bring the conversation back to, we never really got to debrief after the Josh Rosen pick to end last segment. What did you guys think of that pick at number 10?
Love that pick. I think a lot of NFL evaluators, scouts have said this is the number one guy as far as like pro ready. He can come in, start from day one. Arizona has a solid team. They have a solid run offense. When you get David Johnson back, even though they didn't have a good statistically run offense last year without David Johnson, they've got a solid team. They've moved on from Carson Palmer, who's retired. Come in, get Josh Allen, get your pro ready guy. Good pick.
Mm-hmm. And if he's not ready week 1, they have Sam Bradford. They signed him to a 1-year deal. Right. He can be that bridge quarterback, if you want to call it that. But he does get hurt a lot. So Rosen, he could be a guy that could be thrust into action early. And I think he'll be ready to do that. So, I mean, I think that's a great pick. You go get your quarterback of the future to replace Carson Palmer, and you're moving forward with him.
It seems to me like one thing that we can really agree on is a lot of teams are making good picks exactly where they want to in this draft. And while there are surprises, a lot of teams are ending up with the players they want. And speaking of ending up with the players they want, the number 12 pick, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have selected Vita Vea, defensive tackle for Washington. Now, I think this is an interesting move, but it's very clear that Vita is one of the best defensive tackle prospects, Vita Vea, that we have seen in the draft. He has Herculean strength, and from what I've read, he can make double teams look like just paper mache out there on the field. So if you're looking to continue to improve your pass rush as the Bucs, you go with Vita Vea. That seems to make sense. But one thing that this does bring up is, how are they going to continue to improve their secondary now with Vita Vea on their front lines?
Yeah, I'm shocked they didn't go Derwin James here. Yeah. They also have Gerald McCoy in the middle of that defense. He's probably a top 2-3 player on their team, and they've already got him in the middle of the defensive line. Excuse me. But that being said, Vita Vea is a ridiculously big, strong human being. He had 41 reps on the bench press at the combine. And you get a guy like that in the middle, I mean, you can just stuff the run with him and Gerald McCoy together.
I'm with Connor on this one. I'm a little bit surprised. I thought they were going Derwin James. Everyone had them linked to Derwin James. But when you look at it again, you go back to their division. Who are they playing against? They're playing against a couple great rush offenses in the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. You also have to deal with Cam Newton. And Vita Vea is a guy who, although he's going to definitely stuff the run, he's also going to get some pass rush in there. I think he's a good pick. And you know what they say as well, you don't have to address the secondary by addressing the secondary. You address the pass rush, that helps the secondary a lot.
Exactly. And Vita Vea, he's pretty quick on his feet for being a big 350-pound almost guy.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. So Vita Vea, he's now going to the Bucs. Where do you guys see Derwin James falling now? That was someone that it seemed like we all agreed on made a lot of sense for this Tampa Bay team. How much further is he going to fall?
I don't imagine him falling too much further. There's a lot of teams coming up with needy secondaries. The Green Bay Packers come to mind, for one. They have an atrocious pass defense, and they've shipped off Demarius Randall this year. They let Morgan Burnett sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they really need help in the secondary, and Derwin James can be a guy that fixes. He can play in spots at every position. They had Micah Hyde a few years ago, let him walk to the Bills before last season, and he was kind of a utility do-it-all guy. Derwin James is almost a better version of that in a way, or could be a better version of that.
You're a Green Bay guy, right?
I am from Orlando. It doesn't make much sense, but it happens. I think Derwin James is the right pick. You've got Aaron Rodgers. You got to give him help on defense.
Got it. Dan, what do you think? How much farther is Derwin James going to fall?
If he's available at the Packers spot, I think that they're going to select him. But you also have to look at the Redskins. They lost Fuller in the offseason. They could go and get some secondary help as well. It's really a toss-up at this point. We don't expect these guys to fall, so when they do, some of these teams are thinking, oh, we've got our guy, we're going to get this guy, and then all of a sudden, Derwin James falls in their lap. So Could be Packers, could be Redskins. I think it's going to be one of those two teams.
Yeah, you mentioned Washington. One of the things that they consistently need to improve on is their pass defense. Derwin James seems to make a lot of sense for me because they were 27th last year in total points allowed throughout the season. That's a defense that needs a little bit of retooling. Aside from Derwin James, do you guys think there's anyone else on the board that makes a lot of sense for this Washington team?
Deron Payne makes a lot of sense. He's a similar player to Vita Vea, a big plug in the middle. I thought Vita Vea would have fit nicely with Washington, but you look at Deron Payne, he came into Alabama at 350 pounds. He's slimmed down. He's a little bit over 300 now, so he's a lot more in shape, very strong, very athletic, and he can be a dynamic force in the middle of the Washington defensive line.
Again, I agree with Connor. The Washington Redskins had the 32nd ranked rush defense last year, the worst rush defense in the league. You get a big, stuffy run guy like that out of Alabama, a guy who knows how to play. That's the pick you got to go with if you're Washington at this point. I think they probably expected Vita Vea to be there, so they're going to have to audible.
Yeah, and Deron seems like the next best option.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and when you look at a lot of the Super Bowl caliber teams in recent years, the Seattle Seahawks, Denver Broncos, Carolina Panthers, those teams that have been up there, they have just imposing defensive fronts, and adding a guy like Deron Payne can really get that started for Washington.
Seems to make a lot of sense to me. It's funny, between the analysts that we have on the show, Darren and Jake could not butt heads any more than they do. They're like two bucking rams, and you two seem to agree on absolutely everything. Is it because you live so close together? Maybe you share a bathroom? I don't know. Is that the reason that you all seem to agree on everything? You seem to be right so far.
We're just smart guys. Great minds think alike. We do live together. We share a bathroom. We share a hallway. We share a lifestyle. Yeah, no, but I don't know. I think we both have sort of an analytical look at it, and I think we both looked at some of the same mock drafts, looked at the players, looked at the team needs, and it's not an emotional thing for us at the point. We're just looking at it and saying, who are the players that are going to go? If they didn't go, what are the team needs? And I think that's why we kind of see eye to eye on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. A little bit of house chemistry, if you will.
Probably, yeah.
There you go. There you go. So some of the picks that are coming up now, obviously we've talked a little bit about your Green Bay Packers, your favorite team. Let's jump ahead a little bit, just because, to your Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
That's your favorite team, right?
That is my
the
favorite
player
team.
that you would like your Falcons to take still on the board?
Nope.
Nope. Gone.
I liked, I liked Vea. I mean,
Yeah.
I also like Payne, and it seems like he's going to go very shortly. Falcons are a team that lost some really good offensive or defensive linemen. They lost Poe, who was an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler years ago. I don't think he's going to be like any of these defensive linemen are going to be available for them.
That's a good point. You say none of these defensive linemen are going to be available, and Washington has selected Deron Payne, defensive tackle from Alabama with the number 13 pick. Again, this pick seems to make a lot of sense for a team that struggled to defend the run last year. You get a big body up front to plug those gaps like Deron Payne has been. That's an incredible move. And I'm getting word now of another move. This is one that I didn't expect. I don't know if you guys expected this. New Orleans just traded up for the Green Bay Packers pick. This is interesting. Why do you think they did that?
Because they play in a division with some great quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to address the secondary here.
Yeah.
Derwin James could be his time, not the Bucs. Maybe it's
another division, an NFC South opponent.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and they added Marshawn Lattimore with their first pick last year. He went on to be the Defensive Rookie of the Year. They could be looking for another dynamic playmaker in Derwin James, or even Lamar Jackson.
That would
Drew
be
Brees replacement.
Right, and the Saints is one of the places that he has been projected he could go because it's got to be a creative offense. A guy like Sean Payton has a very creative offense. Maybe so. Maybe it could be Jackson here. I'd be surprised. That'd be great.
I would be surprised too.
Yeah, Michael Vick 2.0 in the NFC South again.
So let's talk a little bit again about what Deron Payne is going to bring to the team that he just got picked. But what is he going to do for this run stoppage for Washington?
Well, we mentioned it. They were atrocious defending the run, and you get a physical guy up there that can command double teams. He doesn't get pushed around, commands a ton of attention, and that just makes it really tough to run the football. And running the football is still key in this league, as much of a passing league as it is. if you can run the football, then the defense is struggling because then they have to commit more guys in the box. And then you've got great quarterbacks around the league that can just pick apart man-to-man coverage. So.
Sets up your play action as well, obviously. Payne, like Connor mentioned, especially in that SEC or in the SEC title game and in the national championship, he's a run stuffer. He splits gaps. He's not much of a guy that's going to generate some pass rush. I think he had maybe 1 sack this year, but you never know how that's going to translate to the next level when he's when he's with guys that are superior defensive physical specimens. Lost all my words.
Hey man,
Jordan.
It's all good. It happens. We've been on here for a while.
Yeah, we have.
And now, because this trade has just been made, like we said, if you're just joining us, New Orleans Saints now have the next pick instead of the Packers. So we're going to once again send it out to our big board to take a look at what the New Orleans Saints are likely going to do with this 14th pick. So Eric, Nick, guys, you had to adjust on the fly for this one. I know you were ready to talk about Green Bay. So what's going to happen with the Saints?
All right, guys. Yeah, I mean, this is surprising. You know, whether or not they're trying to solidify kind of that offense, and what we see here, there's some things that we're doing. And we know Drew Brees is getting up there in years. Do you think it might be a Lamar Jackson move or something like that? Or?
If it's Lamar Jackson, that might be perhaps the biggest move of this draft so far. We've seen the Bills trade up.
Yeah.
We saw, I mean, just some crazy stuff so far. Could it also be that they think that Calvin Ridley could come off the board? Are they trying to get another weapon next to Michael Thomas?
It could be it. I mean, I like DJ Moore. We got some other guys up here that could be, you know, that person who's going to get taken. You know, guys, we'll see what happens. But this is shocking. You know, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. Yeah, this is really surprising, and I think we can all agree there are a lot of different directions that New Orleans can go with this pick. Talk to me a little bit about the different ways they can make this pick work for them. They could obviously go offense. They could also go defense too and get the guy that you hoped was destined to wear the green and yellow, which was Derwin James.
It is, and that's one of the luxuries of being a good team. You can go a lot of different directions because you don't have a lot of holes. They have a good running game. They have Drew Brees for at least another season, maybe 2, maybe 3, you never know. You've got Marshawn Lattimore outside at corner. They don't have a ton of weaknesses, so this is probably a best available situation if they've really liked a guy in the scouting process from their interviews and whatnot, and he's fallen, got a chance to go get him, and we'll see what they do.
They could go Tremaine Edmonds here. He's a guy who seemed to fall a little bit. Hyper-athletic linebacker, only 19 years old. Maybe a little bit of a project, but very skilled as is. They could go a lot of directions, like Connor mentioned. You're looking for best available. If you're trading up this far and you don't have that many needs, you've got a guy that's on your board that you didn't expect to be there. Derwin James fits that for me, and as does Edmonds.
And to flesh out, again, the details of this trade, the Packers now get the number 27 pick in this draft, and they get the 147 pick, as well as the Saints' first-round pick next year. Good move for them. Did the Packers get enough out of this trade to make it worth it?
I think when you get an additional first-round pick, that's probably worth it. But they are passing up an elite talent in Derwin James, who many thought was going to go top 10. So you don't know. I mean, if the Saints pick 27 again next year, that's not really worth it. If they struggle a little bit, then you look, maybe you get a top 15 pick out of it, then it might be worth it.
Even if you don't, I think if you can pick up 2 extra starters in a league that's proven it's all about depth. If you look at this year, who is the Super Bowl winning quarterback? A backup. You know, you look at a lot of these guys, it's about picking up as many pieces as you can, especially if you don't see necessarily your guy there. They can pick up an extra first-round pick, the first-round pick this year. They just swap spots, and then also pick up, what did you say, the 100-something pick? Is that what it was?
147th pick.
Okay.
I believe I said.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That might be a depth guy. But if you can pick up an extra starter, I think you do it.
And to counter that, the Packers coming in had a league high 12 picks coming into this draft. So they don't necessarily need more picks. They might just need better picks. So it's an interesting move by them, in my opinion.
Is this the most interesting move we've seen in the draft so far? I'm getting word the pick isn't in yet, so we got a little bit of time to kind of reflect and reminisce on what's happened so far in the first 13 picks. Is this the biggest surprise for you guys, or has there been something from tonight's draft that's really stuck out with you as a head-scratcher?
I didn't love the Baker Mayfield pick, but
pretty clear. Yeah.
No, this is a pretty surprising pick for the Saints to make that big of a jump. That makes me think, wow, they have a guy that they're in love with. That's shocking to jump with 13 picks. That's significant for a team that doesn't have many holes. You'd think it'd have to be a pretty significant guy that their draft room absolutely loves. I'm thinking it's definitely going to be James, but you know what? It could be. Maybe they have intel that Lamar Jackson, a guy they could have fallen in love with, wasn't going to fall. Who knows? One of those two guys.
Yeah. And I mean, I think as well, it's pretty surprising. This was supposed to be the year the Packers front office changed, became more aggressive, and they were showing that going and getting Jimmy Graham, getting Muhammad Wilkerson, being willing to part ways with Jordy Nelson. And there were rumors before the draft that they would move up to get an elite talent. But they didn't do that. They've traded down, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, no matter what happens with this next pick. Because like you guys have said, the Saints really are a complete team, and if the ball bounces a different way, maybe they beat the Vikings in the playoffs. I mean, that was such a close game. This is a team that has been led by Drew Brees for year after year after year. Maybe you're thinking that, okay, he is nearing the end of his career. We got to transition to the future with someone like Lamar Jackson. It would be an interesting pick, but I think we'll just have to wait and see. I'm still a little bit shell-shocked by this one. I was not expecting this trade up. I could foresee the Bills. I could foresee the Cardinals. This one is still a little bit of a surprise to me.
As a Falcons fan, it's concerning because they were good last year, and now you're thinking, oh, they're going to pick a top shelf talent. Don't love that. But you know what? We'll have to wait and see, like you were saying. Little concern. They're willing to trade depth for next year, which means I think they actually are going to go win now. I think they're going to pick a player that's not quarterback that's going to be a project.
And in an attempt to win now, the number 14 pick, the New Orleans Saints have picked Marcus Davenport, defensive end out of Texas San Antonio. Marcus Davenport has been known for being an incredible force on the defensive line, pretty much wreaking havoc wherever he goes. He was a top prospect coming into this draft, but he was a name that we haven't been mentioning a lot. We got hung up on Derwin James. We thought Lamar Jackson might be the move, but here we are. We're talking about Marcus Davenport going to the Saints. Does this make sense to you guys? Is this worth trading up that many spots to get this guy?
It actually would have made more sense to me if it was the Packers picking, because they were linked to him quite a bit. They need edge rushing, they need secondary help, they need to stop the pass, and so that would have been a pick I thought they would have made. I don't know, this doesn't seem like a win now kind of move to me. It seems like he's kind of a raw prospect from Texas San Antonio. He kind of might need some time to develop, and I don't know if this is the best pick. He's got loads of potential, but I don't know if it's for right now.
So he was a three-sport athlete in high school. He's got great burst, great motor, great athleticism. He's a guy, 8.5 sacks last year, Conference USA, Defensive Player of the Year. I like Davenport a lot. I'm shocked, though, that they didn't think they wanted to go for a guy maybe like Harold Landry later in the draft, who was last year coming in, like after last year's draft, he was projected to be a top 10 pick, has the talent, led the league and led NCAA in sacks in 2016, I believe. So I'm a little surprised they didn't go with him. They traded this far up, but this says something about what they see in Davenport. The other thing to look at here, a little bit something to note, is that Davenport is apparently a guy that struggles with a lot of anxiety. Something to note moving forward. You know, is he someone that has the confidence? That's what a lot of NFL draft rooms have been wondering about him.
Yeah, now the spotlight has been shown on him as a team moves up so many picks in order to secure him. It's an interesting move, to be sure. And now we can talk about the 15th pick in this draft, which I believe, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because my notes have been all over the place. Oakland Raiders, right, have the 15th pick now after the trade that they made. Where do you guys think they're going? How are they going to shore up their team with this pick?
Edmonds. I think they're going to go Tremaine Edmonds. John Gruden was linked to a sideline-to-sideline guy, as I said earlier in the draft. I thought they were going to go Roquan Smith if he were available. Now I think they go with a little bit of a project in Edmonds, but a total stud out of Virginia Tech. Got speed. He can rush the passer. He can also drop back. So I think they go Edmonds here. What do you think?
Yeah, Edmonds could have been a guy gone in the top 10. They don't need much on offense other than O-line maybe, but they do need to kind of shore up that defense. They have Khalil Mack. They need some other guys to go around him and build a solid defense going forward.
Oh yeah, no, it's well known that the Raiders need linebackers, they need cornerbacks, because they were ranked 30th last year in defensive takeaways. Not one of the strongest defenses. And right, when you have a guy like Carr slinging it around for you under center and you have the weapons that he has at his disposal, you're not worried about your offense as much because he made such a big investment in your franchise quarterback. I agree with you guys. It seems like they're going to use this pick to take an incredibly talented player who is still on the board on the defensive side of the ball. And they could go a lot of different ways. They could go linebacker. They could go cornerback. It seems like linebacker, if they go, they're going to go with Jermaine Edmonds, which I agree with you guys, I think is a great pick. If they go cornerback, who are you looking for them to take?
It could go Josh Jackson out of Iowa. They did draft Garyon Conley recently out of Ohio State. He hasn't produced yet, but you look at Josh Jackson. He was a ball hawk at Iowa. 8 interceptions, 27 pass breakups last year, and he only had 1 year as a starter, but it was a great year. You look at him, you look at Jair Alexander out of Louisville. He's a great zone defender, about as good an athlete as Denzel Ward, who went number 4.
Josh Jackson's my favorite corner in the draft. He's a little bit bigger. He's shown that he's a ball hawk. The NFL's all about getting turnovers. I think he's a guy you got to look at here, but really, Derwin James is still sitting there. I don't want to say it. I don't want to jinx the guy and have him sitting in the draft room cursing Medill because we said he was going to go 10 picks earlier. But you never know. You could shore up that secondary as well. I know they've got a pretty solid secondary to begin with, but I could see it going either way there. They might go best player available, which I think is either going to be Derwin James or Edmonds.
Man, how great would it be if Derwin James was watching our Medill Sports broadcast of this? I mean, if he got to curse us out, I would be thrilled. That means we have a much bigger viewing audience than we expected. Yeah. But I agree with you guys. I think there is a lot of different directions that they could go with this pick, and you still have so many talented players on the board, on the D-line, in the linebackers, and also in that secondary. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Raiders make of this pick that's coming up here soon. Are they going to be a team, after this all sorts out, next year, looking at them, their divisional rivals, or are they going to be a team that is going to be able to contend next year with the pieces that they have?
I think they should. 2 years ago, they were great with Derek Carr. They had injuries right before they got to the playoffs, which halted their run. But you look at Kansas City, they've lost Alex Smith, and Patrick Mahomes is going to be making his first year as a starter in the NFL. So you look at him, you look at the Broncos with Case Keenum. They don't have their quarterback situation completely under control. So you look at the Chargers, they might be the Chargers and Raiders. You look, Phillip Rivers is a pretty solid quarterback in the league still, despite getting older, and they've got a pretty good foundation there. So I think the Raiders, I mean, they have the talent. Khalil Mack, Jordy Nelson, Amari Cooper, Derek Carr. That's a great offense.
They have the talent, they have the offense, and with the 15th pick of this draft, they're adding to their offense once again. The Oakland Raiders are picking up Colton Miller, offensive tackle out of UCLA. Now, he was the tackle that blocked for Josh Rosen throughout his career, known as being one of the best tackles in this draft, also in the game. And it seems that the Bills have now traded up to get the Ravens pick. That was just word that I got from our producer. This is a lot to handle. I need to take a break. I need to step back, which means we're going to go to commercial here so we can all take a breath after the shock of this pick and now this next trade. So don't go anywhere because we have plenty to break down when we come back from this commercial break here on Medill Sports Talk's coverage of the 2018 NFL Draft.
If you want to be a parent, it doesn't matter how you play, what you wear, how you dance, or even what direction life takes you. You just need to be there. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care don't need perfection. They just need you.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their acceptable child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Really?
Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
All right. Thank you, Smokey the Bear, for tossing it back to us. We are back here in the studio after what was really a forest fire of incredible trades and picks here over the past couple of rounds.
I see what you did there, by the way.
Thank you. Did you guys like those
Well
puns?
done.
Yeah,
that
that was a risk. I hope that paid off. We
No
didn't
such thing as
lose
a bad pun.
50% of our viewers because of those. But to make matters short, a lot has happened. We just saw Colton Miller get picked up. The Bills just made another trade to go to 16. Guys, you're back in the studio. Welcome back. You've missed a lot. Catch me up on what your thoughts are after seeing what we just saw.
I mean, the Bills again continuing to surprise us here. We saw the move with getting Josh Allen here. They're all in the mix. All these predictions that we've made, even by the real analysts,
out the window,
gone.
Throw them in the trash.
Still safe to say that nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
There you go.
They've made moves this draft.
Yeah.
You got to applaud them for their aggressiveness. I'm sure they must see somebody on the board now who they don't think is going to be there in a couple of picks.
The Bills' touchdown song is "The Bills make me want to shout." The Bills make me want to shout. Okay,
and
they
maybe,
are literally.
I have an update.
Let's hear it.
Maybe the Bills are going to make their fans shout with this next pick, because the next pick that the Bills select at 16 is Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech, linebacker. He has a lot of talent. This is a guy that we've been talking about for the past couple of minutes as being one of the real standouts in this draft from the linebacker position, can defend the run, can defend the pass effectively. Again, good, solid pick for the Bills. Now, we're going to toss it over to Olivia Reiner in the control room because a lot's been going on. Olivia, help us make sense of all of this. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Jordan. Yep, you're certainly right. There's a lot going on here. And next, 17 through 20, certainly, to continue to surprise us. And I've got 3 different positions that I'm looking at that a lot of these teams will be trying to make some choices between. And more specifically, I'm thinking here that Dallas and Los Angeles will go for some wide receivers. So Alabama's Calvin Ridley, at one point he was a top 10 pick. He's a big name there. Certainly fell as teams signed wideouts in free agency, but I'm confident he'll find a home in the first round. On the other hand, the Seahawks and the Chargers could both use pass rushers to support the defense. Boston College's Harold Landry is someone that comes to mind at that position, but lots of different needs and lots of rising stars left. I'll be here in the studio eagerly awaiting these next picks. Back to you guys.
Awesome, thanks so much, Olivia. One thing that you just mentioned that came up was that the Bills needed a linebacker. It looks like they got the linebacker that they were looking for. They got Tremaine Edmonds. Guys, what do you think of the pick?
Interesting move. I mean, you look at this defense and what it was last year, giving up 22 points per game, a very middle-of-the-road defense, trying to get back to the ways of the Rex Ryan era. How about that scary defense, right?
Yeah.
This pick could try and give that old image, right? Maybe a little bit more of a new sort of feel with this defense. They want to get back to that old defense.
I talked a little bit about Tremaine Edmonds on the show earlier, and the biggest thing is he's 19 years old.
Unbelievable.
I mean, think about that. Think what you were doing at 19, playing second base, I would imagine.
There you go.
But
hitting 239.
19 years old, and the best part is you don't have to worry about Bill's Mafia getting a hold of him for 2 more years because he's not able to legally drink and participate in those tailgating festivities for 2 more years. So he's safe from Bill's Mafia for a while.
So they go offense, right?
Yep.
And now they go defense, so they're clearly trying to be more of a well-rounded team. Again, interesting move, but I like it.
Yeah, a lot of Bills fans were so excited when their team made the playoffs this past year. Do you think these moves are going to bring them back?
Hey, let's be honest. Bills Mafia, they're going to be jumping through picnic tables. They're going to be lighting things on fire pregame, breaking cars. It doesn't matter who they're going to pick. Bills Mafia are some of the most entertaining fans. And as Chris Berman always said, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So as far as I'm concerned, they could have picked anybody, and Bills Mafia is still going to be the best fan base, or arguably one of the best fan bases. I didn't mean to insult your Steelers, you know.
Oh, okay. And hey, the Lions, right?
Oh. It's a bit. Hey, this is the holiday for Lions fans. It's one of the few days of the years that we can be excited
and have hope.
Yeah, right. Like you said, glass is always half full on draft day.
You guys are undefeated.
For the time being,
I guess everyone is. So is Cleveland. So
That's right. So is Cleveland. All right, so let's talk about the trade details of what just happened. The Ravens now get the Bills' first-round pick at number 22. Plus, they now get a third-round pick. The Bills, in return, are going to get a fifth-rounder. So walk me through your guys' thought process. Yeah, are you crunching the numbers?
Yeah, crunching the numbers, and yep, checks out.
It checks out. Okay, we make sense. That's good.
Carry the one. Yeah.
What do you guys think is in this trade for the Ravens? Why are they making this move?
We've heard Lamar Jackson as a potential landing spot in Baltimore. With an aging Joe Flacco who's had ACL injuries, who really hasn't been able to stay healthy, that's a name that we've heard. We've also heard Calvin Ridley, a wide receiver, trying to add some depth to this offense. Evidently, the Ravens don't feel confident maybe with these players. And again, we talked about value. Can you pick a player right now that will make an impact today? Evidently, Baltimore doesn't feel that way.
Right. I think if you're Baltimore and you do decide to go in that direction, it has to be an investment from top to bottom to be all in on the changing of your franchise to move that way. And you said aging Joe Flacco. Could they spin zone, flip the other side of the coin, be trying to surround Joe Flacco with enough talent, thinking he's still got a number of serviceable years left?
So this is an interesting conversation because now you see Baltimore at number 22. Are they confident that they can get a guy like Lamar Jackson, like a Calvin Ridley, at number 22? We've seen them have some very interesting acquisitions. How about RG3, Robert Griffin III, John Brown? So they're trying to get this offense going, but evidently they're trading not that much further down. They're confident, this is what it shows, that they can get who they want at the 22 spot.
That's right. To me, it seems to be a move that makes some sense because if you look at the next couple of teams, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to be going anywhere. It seems to me like the team that's the best fit for him is likely going to be the Ravens, and if that's the man they're looking for, it seems to make sense that he'll still be on the board. So I get it.
I question, though, the Lamar Jackson pick because then why do you pick up RG3? Why do you pick up Robert Griffin III if you're already pretty content that Joe Flacco is going to be your guy? You have your backup. Something tells me they're not going to try and draft three rather capable quarterbacks at this time. That says to me, maybe a guy like Calvin Ridley, very talented wide receiver out of Alabama, could be that option.
Spin zone, do you think Calvin Ridley is the most talented wide receiver in this draft?
That
DJ Moore?
Is a conversation we're going to have to continue in just a moment because I just got word that the 17th pick of the draft is in. It's the Los Angeles Chargers. And they're selecting Derwin James, safety out of Florida State. Guys, this is a name that we've been throwing around quite a bit throughout the past couple of minutes. He is one of the best safety prospects to come through in this draft, for sure. He's incredibly physical. A lot of people say that he might be a better safety long-term than Minkah Fitzpatrick, but that was really a big storyline heading into this draft. The two big safeties coming into this draft, the Chargers get one of them pretty quickly because we're going to toss to the big board in a second, but real quick, what do you guys think of this pick?
Very good move for the third best defense in the NFL. Very talented player.
I think Minkah Fitzpatrick was the better safety, and you saw the success that he had for a program like Alabama compared to an off year for Florida State with Derwin James that may have factored into him falling a little bit further.
And how do you guys see this now impacting the Chargers as they move forward into this next year?
Well, this is already an elite defense, at least statistically. You have to say it. A lot of people might not know that. But again, now could it be the best defense, especially in that division out in the AFC West? Could be.
Possibly. I still don't think anyone's going to go to the games. I mean, they're still they're still going to struggle for attendance, right?
No more Qualcomm, if you will, when they were the San Diego Chargers.
That's right, no more Qualcomm. Okay, so I've just gotten word that the guys at the big board are ready to drop some knowledge on us about an upcoming pick here with the Seattle Seahawks. Nick, Eric, what do you guys think is coming down the pipe for Seattle?
All right, guys. Well, let's get back to the trenches. Let's get back to the mean and green on that line of scrimmage. Let's go.
I see what you did there, mean and green.
I gotta talk about Seattle when we're talking about mean and green. All right. So we know that Russell Wilson needs to be protected. Okay. We need to see him have the ability to make some plays. Maybe not move out of the pocket so much. Although he is very, very dangerous when he does that. These guys right here. I mean, we're looking at Hernandez. We got Wynn. I mean, what do you think is going to be that pick?
I think if they should be high on Will Hernandez just because they need that running monster.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. It seems like I've gotten word, correct me if I'm wrong, that Green Bay is now on the clock. They just made a trade, and now they have the next pick. Sorry, big board guys, for putting together that really lovely fancy graphic about the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe we'll come back to that later on, but it seems that the Cheese have the pick in this next, they got the pick next. What do you guys think about that? What's happening here?
I think Green Bay, they go cornerback. Now, is it Josh Jackson, who arrived in the draft in style in a helicopter? I don't know if that helps or hurts his draft stock, but I got to believe it's worth mentioning. He arrived in Dallas in a helicopter. Or do they go Jair Alexander, who is a guy that can also help you in the special teams games? And I know they're trying to take special teams out of the game, but there's still something to be said about that added value to get a guy like Alexander that can be a punt returner in addition to his cornerback position. So it's a toss-up at this point. We know Jackson has the stats to back it up as he led the Big Ten and all of the FBS with 8 interceptions, but the combine numbers favor Alexander.
You know it's going to be defense. At least we can agree on that, giving up 24 points per game this year. And that, again, we talk about defense putting pressure on the offense with the likes of Aaron Rodgers. I like the Josh Jackson pick. And if you're a Green Bay fan, again, you remember some of the older corners like Mike McKenzie, these lockdown corners from the Brett Favre era. Have we seen a defense like that was as good as the old Packers defense since then? The answer is no. Josh Jackson could be your find right there at the cornerbacks.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people are saying that Jackson doesn't necessarily have the college career to, he doesn't have a big track record when it comes to his career with Iowa. But I mean, this guy is a ball hawk. It seems to me like the raw talent is there. And if you're Green Bay and you're looking to upgrade your secondary, makes sense to get him while he's still on the board.
He had an Odell Beckham-like interception. Remember against the upset win against Ohio State out in Iowa City for the Hawkeyes. Yeah. So again, playing big on a big stage. That's what you want in a player like that.
I'll take it a step further. His 40-yard dash was the red flag. He ran a 4.5. That's not fast enough to be a corner in this league. But how many games are played with a stopwatch? How much value are we going to put into the combine with the stopwatch? Ready, go. I know it's important at the wide receiver and the cornerback position, yes, but Josh Jackson is a ball-hawking corner who has drawn comparisons to who? Richard Sherman with that 6'1" frame. And I don't know. And, of course, arriving in the helicopter also gives him the nod.
No, that's a pretty good comparison to be made between him and Sherman. If you're Josh Jackson, you got to love that. So now that this trade has come and gone, it's happened, let's see what each team is going to get out of this, right? Here are the details. The Seahawks receive this year's 1st, 3rd, and 6th round picks now from the Packers. It seems to me like the Seahawks are getting a pretty good end of the deal here, guys. What do you think?
It's interesting. Again, so we've seen a lot of trades this draft. So, okay, all right, Seattle's going to get some extra picks. Okay, now when you're trading these players, right, they better be getting something good in return. And they either, again, are confident that they'll get their player in that spot by trading back, or it's just not the time that this player can make the type of impact that they want.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's all about the investment. It's a huge price to pay, so you better make sure you get that return on the investment.
Right, so if you're the Seahawks here, you've traded back, what players do you think they're now looking at that they hope are still going to be on the board?
I thought it was going to be a replacement for Richard Sherman, right?
Yeah.
I thought that Josh Jackson was going to be that guy. Evidently not. Now that you have a huge hole in that cornerback position, again with that Legion of Boom that is not necessarily the Legion of Boom anymore, again, it's going to be a defensive pick for them, but who knows what they could do.
Or do you go with the approach of best available? There's still a ton of talent on the board, specifically in that offensive line. I mean, Isaiah Wynn, that's a guy out of the University of Georgia that plays a mean brand of football in that offensive line. It'd be hard telling to pass up on a guy like Isaiah Wynn if he's still available.
Seattle gave up 21 points per game last year. I can't remember when this defense was giving up over 20 points per game until kind of the recent memory.
But Russell Wilson was running for his life every single play as well.
Right. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But this defense has struggled mightily, and they're trying to get back to that defensive old.
It's a good point, and let's see if this pick now is going to help out that defense. Because with the 18th pick, the Green Bay Packers now have selected Jair Alexander, cornerback from Louisville. So we were right that they were looking to go cornerback, different cornerback than we thought they were going to pick. Guys, talk to me a little bit about Jair Alexander. Why do you think they traded up to get him?
I mean, as I mentioned, he's a guy that jumps off the page too when you talk about the numbers. You know, he ran one of the fastest 40 times at the combine. He's got the oily hips. He can move any different direction.
Oily hips?
You never heard that one?
Is that a football term?
That's a football term.
I've never heard of that before.
How about this one? He can play in a phone booth. Tell me you've heard that one.
He can play in a phone. What does that mean?
He can play in a phone.
Ah,
he can cover anybody.
That makes sense.
And he can help you in the punt return game, which I mentioned earlier, but you got to give the love for special teams while it's still a part of the game at least.
We've been talking about some of the older players, some of the older talented players out of college in this draft show. Louisville has brought some pretty impressive corners out of this Cardinals program. Remember William Gay, right? Very highly talented player out of college. The average NFL corner, but I will say this Cardinals program has competed. It's been there year in and year out. And again, another talented corner.
Yeah, very talented corner. I mean, this guy was an honorable ACC mention, even though he didn't play much last year due to injury. So this is obviously a guy that they see making a very big impact right away on their defense. And this brings up a very interesting, I mean, you could see him here on the highlights. Guy is a great open field tackler. You see him sweep low for the legs. You can see that he's very good in coverage, make sure to find the ball once that ball is in the air. It's a guy that seems to be able to do a little bit of everything.
Corners get the bad rep that they don't want to come up and hit anybody, and he puts that rumor to rest. I mean, he's not like Deion Sanders, afraid to tackle anyone. Sorry, Primetime, still love you, but you know it. You didn't like tackling people. Could cover anybody, but Alexander is a guy that can do both. He can even help you in the run game, which isn't necessarily the most important thing for a corner to be able to do, but it certainly helps.
One of the things I think is an underlooked area in cornerbacks is, are they undersized, right? They can be fast, they can be strong, they can do everything you said, but are they undersized? Jair Alexander looks like he has some nice size as well to maybe compete with some of these bigger players or faster players at this level.
And you know, this means that Josh Jackson, a name we've been talking about so often, is still on the board. So could he still be the Richard Sherman replacement with the Seahawks, or do you think someone else is going to just swoop him up before their pick comes around now?
I don't know. I mean, that I guess the 40-yard dash is as important as scouts want to make it seem. And even though the game's not played with a stopwatch, it's I don't know if that's the only red flag with Josh Jackson, but he certainly has the numbers, and he didn't have the greatest workout. But I still believe whoever gets Josh Jackson gets a quality starter on day one.
And it also tells you that Seattle may like Josh Jackson better than Jair Alexander. They may just be confident with that pick and with his ability to trade back.
So guys, a lot of defensive picks have been made as of late, and reportedly, and this is insight thanks to our incredible team in the control room, possibly thanks to our social media wizard Patrick Engel, it seems there are only defensive coaches right now in the war room for the Dallas Cowboys who are coming up as the next pick. I'm looking at your eyebrows. They seem surprised. You seem surprised. Why?
I'll start. It's simple math. You lost Des Bryant. You need to replace him. A simple addition in any wide receiver. All 3 of the first-round caliber wide receivers are still on the board. Darren, I know you like Calvin Ridley. I like DJ Moore, but it's kind of a toss-up. They could go either way with that, but I do think that they will go to replace Dez Bryant and draft the first wide receiver that we've seen taken so far.
Yeah, I like the Calvin Ridley pick. I just like the size. You know, size is something you can't teach, right?
Yeah.
But that being the point, you can't teach it. Just saying. The point is,
can't coach it either, right?
Can't coach it, exactly. But can you put it in a phone booth?
Something like that.
Depends on the size of the phone booth, exactly. Point being, Calvin Ridley, the guy with size, I think maybe could play more to the outside of the numbers, as opposed to maybe DJ Moore, more of an inside of the numbers guy at the slot position.
I'll give you that with Calvin Ridley. He's a guy that forces you to defend outside the numbers, also a better deep threat. So it kind of goes back to what you're valuing if you're the Dallas Cowboys. But who knows? I mean, it's been a defensive theme here in the later part of the first round, so maybe they'll stick with that.
Man, I love having you guys back in the studio. We have one of our camera women over here on the floor laughing with your last exchange.
We've talked about a phone booth twice within 2 picks. Is that a new Medill Sports Talk record?
That might be a new Medill Sports Talk record, which, I mean, you guys set a lot of records when you're on air together, because I know this for a fact. You've set 2 records before since the 3 of us have been on air together. You set a record for how many times one of you said, "Well, let me take you back for a history lesson."
Yeah.
That was said at least 3 times by you, Jake Reba, during our college basketball segment. And I know for sure that no one has had their hair made fun of more on this show than our incredibly handsome Darren Zaslow.
It's true. It's true. We like to bring some energy.
And we've been on our best behavior, yet we're still getting some grief and some criticism. So that tells me that there's no need to be on my best behavior.
I mean, here's just a little Darren Zaslow, Jake Rietma, Jordan Klein summary for you. Already, a pinky promise was rejected. We learned that you can't teach size.
Good point.
You can't,
or coach it.
Right. And you can't put tall people in a phone booth.
That is true. No, very, very valuable points that I'm sure the millions and millions of people watching this broadcast absolutely love taking home with them.
And we've learned that you want your hips to be oily.
That is true. So we're talking, I got to reel this back in. I have to reel this back in because we are talking about the draft. We are talking about takeaways, right? Some of the biggest things that we've seen so far in the draft. What are some of the surprises? What are some of the lessons learned that we've seen so far through 18 picks?
Well, it seems like obviously the quarterbacks, right? The arms race, that's obviously been the big story of this draft. You see Baker Mayfield going one. You see Buffalo trading up for Josh Allen. It's an interesting draft narrative, but at least in my recent memory, these are the most quarterbacks that have been talked about going in the first round since I can remember. I don't know if you agree.
No, I do agree with that, but I am going to go on the other side of the ball for my point. On the defensive side of things, we always talk on the other side about running backs, not wanting to invest a first-round pick in a running back because of the injury possibility or the durability issues. And there's often that same talk on the defensive side with the linebacker because of some of the shorter careers that we've seen in recent memory. But this year, we're seeing a lot of linebackers taken in the first round. Think about Roquan Smith. I like that pick. And also with Tremaine Edmonds. Those are 2 linebackers that I think can start on day 1, and I'm glad to see the respective teams that stepped up and took them make that investment in a linebacker because I think that's so crucial to help your defense.
Another big thing, how about Denzel Ward out of Ohio State, a corner going number 4 overall to Cleveland, who goes offense with Baker Mayfield, now goes defense with Denzel Ward. We talked about some of these older players. How about Joe Hayden, right? Goes to the Steelers. Lockdown corner. When he was in his prime in Cleveland, is Denzel Ward that replacement? We've also talked about it with Richard Sherman leaving Seattle. So trying to find some of these replacement players just who are younger and of course extremely talented.
I think you bring up an interesting point when you talk about the Browns, going offense and then going defense, because we saw the Bills do the same exact thing, where they got the quarterback that they think is going to be their future in Josh Allen, and then in their next pick they trade up to go on the defensive side. So this is, I think, an interesting trend that we're starting to see unfold. Can you retool both sides of the ball in the same draft?
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun this draft so far, but can we all agree we're getting to the best part? The 20th pick.
Oh my gosh.
Detroit Lions, right? Right? I know everybody's been on the edge of their seats, as have I.
It's a very indicative narrative of how this offseason has gone. How about all of these moves going on this offseason? I mean, every team has made at least one big one or maybe one surprising offseason move. Now this draft with all these trades. At one point, what? We were going to say, well, 5 quarterbacks could have been taken in the first round, which were on that number, about in that average, but a lot of interesting moves for sure.
Let me ask you this, guys. What is the biggest storyline left to be solved in the first round?
I was going to say Lamar Jackson.
Great question.
I mean, where does Lamar Jackson go? Because this is a guy, could he maybe drop to the second round? Could he go within the next couple picks? He's a hard guy to project, especially with that mobile type of quarterback. We haven't seen many mobile quarterbacks really since Russell Wilson and, of course, Michael Vick, who have been able to run and throw well. So we'll see how he does.
We'll see how he does. And guys, I just got word that the 19th pick is in. The Dallas Cowboys, the host team, they've selected Leighton Vander Esch, linebacker out of Boise State. Vander Esch is known for his size, length, and speed. This guy has been seen as one of the best linebackers to come out of Boise State. In fact, this past season, he recorded the most tackles for a Boise State Bronco of anyone over the past 30 years. So this is a very interesting pick for Dallas, and a fun little bit of detail here that I would like to add as well. We got word, and this is, I think, pretty cool, that when the Dallas Cowboys announced this last pick, Roger Goodell walks up on stage and he's joined by high school football players from Arlington, where the draft is being hosted this year. So a nice little nod to Dallas, the big D in America's city here. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the man they call LVE. It's an interesting move. I do like it for a Dallas defense that has been average. That was average last year. Middle of the pack team trying to find its identity. Now you get a talented player at that linebacker spot that can cover, that can move sideline to sideline. It's a good move for a team that's trying to rebolster this defense.
Absolutely, Darren. And it's a guy that you can root for. You know, he had the neck injuries that kind of factored into his draft stock. People weren't sure if that was going to cause him to fall a little bit. But I think with him landing in Dallas, he can be a staple on that defense and have be an impact player really from day one as your guy, LVE.
It's a good nickname, at the bare minimum.
Great nickname. Yeah, he was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, so this guy definitely, I think, has a lot to add to the Dallas defense. Again, interesting that they did not go wide receiver. I guess we could see it coming because only defensive coaches were in the war room, so it looked like they were going to go defense. But are you guys surprised that they didn't try to find that replacement for Des Bryant?
That Calvin Ridley, the DJ Moore of the world, yeah, with a big vacancy. So who's that number one receiver now that you've got Des Bryant gone and you lose his talent and most importantly, his veteran presence? He's been around this organization a long time. He's been through the quarterback changes. He's been through now Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott getting all the spotlight, being the go-to guys. It's an interesting move.
You know what they say, everything is bigger in Texas. Des Bryant's personality may have been a little bit too big at times. And like you said, with Dak, with Ezekiel Elliott, a lot of personalities. And with the departure of Des, maybe that's addition by subtraction, if you will.
I think that's a fair point. And tonight's been a pretty crazy night already when it comes to varying trades and surprise picks. We just got word of another trade in from our production room. The Steelers have traded wide receiver Martavis Bryant to the Raiders for the number 70 pick, which is a third rounder. Well, I could think of no better panelists to have on the desk with me than Jake Riepma and Darren Zaslow, Pittsburgh's #1 tourist attraction. What do you make of this move, man?
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Unbelievable. You know what? Your segue was perfect into this analysis because of a personality that might be a little too big. Listen, Martavis Bryant is big. He's a talented receiver. He's got a lot of size and height. But I will say this, again, character questions, right? And causing distractions for this team. Believe me, that does not need any more distractions. So now it's interesting, right? Martavis Bryant gone as your number 2. Juju Smith-Schuster now slides up into that true number 2 role, even though he probably was their second best receiver last year. A little more pressure on Eli Rogers now in the slot. So that's a little bit of an interesting drop-off that I, for sure, did not expect.
I'm curious your take on this, being the Steelers superfan that you are. From just an outsider looking in, you know Le'Veon Bell is always, for lack of a better term, can I say it, just running his mouth at times. Same with Antonio Bryant, who I've got mad love for, being a Central Michigan alum. Go Chips, fire up Chips. But point being, I think you gotta feel good about the departure of Martavis Bryant and the fact that you're getting something in return for it with the draft pick.
And Martavis Bryant at times wanted to be traded last year. And as a matter of fact, after he wanted to be traded, he played some of his best football all season long.
Yeah, you're right.
Making big plays down the field, high pointing the football. But again, you can't cause distractions. And this isn't the Steeler way, having distractions, right? Steeler fans are used to seeing Jerome Bettis, right? Hines Ward, okay? It's not the distractions, right? Detroit guy.
No, your precious Steelers way has turned into Facebook living the locker room like Antonio.
But that's not the old Steelers. They're not used to this. And by trading Martavis Bryant, to your question, they're trying to maybe quiet the locker room a little bit. Take some of these distractions away from this team.
You think they're making a move in the right direction with this trade?
I do, but it puts a lot of pressure. I think the key now to this team, other than Le'Veon Bell and Big Ben, it's Juju Smith-Schuster. Dare I say it? Another big personality guy. So
he's at least funny, though. I got a kick out of the bike stuff. And the
Juju TV, are you a YouTube subscriber on there? I know we're on YouTube Live right now. Maybe you should check it out.
I should. I do subscribe to a lot of different YouTube channels, so don't worry. We're good there.
All right, guys, so we're going to transition now from Darren's favorite team to Jake's favorite team, because I've just gotten word that with the 20th pick, the Detroit Lions have selected Frank reportedly. I'm so sorry. We had a little bit of a mix-up here over the mics. We've gotten some reports that with the 20th pick, the Detroit Lions are looking to select Frank Ragnow, center for Arkansas. What are your feelings about that? Of course, this isn't set in stone yet. And again, this is reportedly. But what's your initial reaction? You don't look easy.
Oh, Harold Landry is still on the board. He would be such a compliment to Ziggy Ansah as an edge rusher, which is so important in this day and age. They do need to shore up that offensive line. That's one thing when you're the Detroit Lions. There's not really a wrong answer at this point. You got a lot of holes that you can fill, offensive line being one of them. But Harold Landry out of Boston College is just waiting there on the board. Such a fantastic edge rusher, and if I had my choice, that's who I would hope the Lions would do, but I also see the merit in picking an offensive lineman.
And they are going to pick an offensive lineman, because with the 20th pick, the Detroit Lions select Frank Ragnow, center for Arkansas. It's official. Now, this is a very interesting pick, but to me, I think it makes some sense, because the Detroit Lions were ranked last in rushing yards this past year, last in rushing yards per attempt. I think anything that you can do to start to shore up the offensive line, give your backs more room to run, I think makes sense. And with that, we're going to take things to commercial break. We are through. Can you believe it? The first 20 picks of the NFL draft here at Medill Sports Talk. If you've stuck with us, mom, dad, grandparents, anyone who's been there, thank you so much. We'll be right back to look at the next 12 picks of this already exciting NFL Draft 2018.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
When I get all steamed up, then I shout.
Tip me over and pour me out. Oh. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Cheers. Take time to be a dad today.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it.
I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute. They were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor.
The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year, 1 in 195 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism, 1 in 68. I'm Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Hello, and welcome back to Medill Sports Talk. We just got through the 20th pick of the 2018 NFL Draft. We're on to the 21st. We've been going strong so far. Olivia Reiner, how are you doing? How is everything in the control room? What do you see happening for these next 5 picks?
Well, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for checking in. We've been talking extensively about quarterbacks, but how good is a quarterback without a strong offensive line? Now, some of those teams that are in need of filling out that area are Cincinnati, Baltimore, and New England. We've got a number of options left. Texas's Connor Williams and Ohio State's Billy Price, each available for these squads. New England is down offensive tackle Nate Solder, who was drafted by the Patriots in 2011. That is a big hole that Tom Brady will certainly want to fill. The Bengals traded for OT Cordy Glenn, but who knows if he'll stay healthy. Baltimore lost center Ryan Jensen, so they'll want to add pieces up front too. So let's see what they end up doing. Back to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Olivia. That was a great look ahead into the next 5 picks. And before we dive into those, let's recap the last pick that we just saw. The Detroit Lions going with their man, Mr. Ragnar, at center to shore up that offensive line. Connor, talk to me a little bit about this Detroit Lions team. Why does a move like that make sense?
Well, the Lions did need to upgrade their O-line. They could have added some edge rushing help, maybe Harold Landry on the outside to pair with Ziggy Ansah, but the O-line is a big need. They really struggle in the run game. Part of that is a combination of not having running backs, not having great O-line. But I would have liked maybe Will Hernandez out of UTEP. He's a great run blocker, really just gets after it in the run game, and he might have been a better fit. I think Ragnow is a pretty good pick. It addresses that need in a different way. He's more of a pass protector, but either way, they needed O-line help, and they got it.
Dan, talk to me a little bit specifically about Ragnow. What do you think he's going to bring to this Lions O-line?
I quite like Ragnow. You mentioned that Will Hernandez might have been did you say he was better at pass
he's more of a run blocking
okay.
guy.
Yeah, so I like the pass defense. Ragnow is a guy who played at Arkansas, 4-year starter, never allowed a sack. That's pretty significant, especially in the SEC. He's a guy who's got the pedigree. He had some injury concerns towards the end. He got injured in a game against Auburn. We'll see how he comes back from that. Overall, I really like him. He's also got a pretty entertaining YouTube channel. Grizzly Man, 240 subscribers. He does a bunch of outdoorsy stuff. Like the character in this guy as well.
Well, there you go. And I've just gotten word that we have the 21st pick now in. The Cincinnati Bengals have selected another center, Billy Price out of Ohio State. Interesting move. He just won the Remington Award for the best center in college football. This is a guy who has been the centerpiece, pun absolutely intended, of the Ohio State offensive line. He's going to make, I think, a very good addition to the Bengals offensive front because they struggled last year to run the football. They were ranked 31st in the NFL on rushing yards. If you're looking for a guy that's going to try to move some space around to, open up some lanes, this makes some sense to me. What do you guys think?
I like the pick overall. I like the idea of going interior offensive lineman. I don't know that I love Price. Apparently there are some character issues. Maybe he doesn't appear to be super coachable at the next level. Not sure how he's going to respond to tough coaching in the NFL. The other thing is, NFL evaluators, he's got short arms. They say he's got short arms. That can be difficult when you've got defensive linemen trying to swim around you.
And to pair with the short arms, he can be too aggressive at times. You like to have physicality for sure, but sometimes he tends to lunge at defenders and he overextends himself, gets off balance, and defenders at the NFL level, they're going to just really snuff that out, and take advantage of that. He is very experienced and talented. He started every game for that 2014 national championship Ohio State team. So he's got the experience, he's got the aggressive behavior, the strength. He's a talented player, but just has to refine his form a little bit.
He fits the mold, has the experience, two-time All-American. He's a guy you feel like you can plug and play, see how he does. But overall, I don't know about it. We'll have to see how he goes.
Yeah, and I'd rather have a more aggressive physical guy than a guy that's softer and not willing to get after it. You can scale it back easier, I think, than you can add it on.
Right. I'll take a guy with an aggressive mentality in the offensive line. Got to be nasty up there.
Yeah, and it seems to me like they definitely need it. And now I've gotten word that the Titans are actually now on the clock. This next upcoming pick, the 22nd pick, has been traded. So to make sense of this, we're now going to toss it over to our men at the big board, Nick Mantis and Eric Alcantar. Boys, it's been a while. It's good to see you again. Why, for this move, do the Titans move up? Why does this make sense?
All right, guys, well, thanks. We're going to talk Titans because they just moved up. Guys, the Titans, what's interesting about them, I think they're still in the mentality of 2018. New year, new me, new uniform. So, I mean, who do you think that they're going to get? I mean, we're talking edge guys, we're talking defense. I'm really surprised Rashaan Evans is still here.
Rashaan Evans, I think he is kind of falling a little bit. If they really like him, look, they like somebody, right? Because they've traded up for him. They want a difference maker, in my opinion.
Right.
So, but I want to ask you, do you think that difference maker's on the defense side of the ball, or could they be in for a Ridley or a DJ Moore?
I think that's one of the weakest parts of their game that we've seen the entire year of 2017 was that their defense couldn't hold. So they were in a shootout where Marcus Mariota just had to do whatever he could in order to try to get them some wins this past year. So having a Rashaan Evans, having speed guys like Harold Landry coming out of Boston College, that's probably what we're going to see here. It's exciting. So we'll have to wait and see what they do, guys. Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick, Eric. Very well done. So the Titans, as you said, could use some weapons on offense, but they could also use some speed on defense. Which direction do you guys think they're going to go with this pick, and why trade up?
I would lean towards defense on this pick. They have committed to the run game. They have Derrick Henry. They have Marcus Mariota at quarterback. They drafted Corey Davis with their first pick last year. And so I think with Mike Vrabel coming in, played linebacker for the Patriots. He's a defensive mind. I think he's going to want a guy like a Harold Landry, a Rashaan Evans, somebody that can be a force on the defensive end. Rashaan Evans is great in coverage. He's a smaller linebacker, kind of what you're looking for in today's NFL that can cover the pass, and he's also aggressive enough to play the run. Harold Landry is good off the edge. We mentioned earlier that he led the nation in sacks with, I believe it was 16.5 in his sophomore campaign.
I agree with Connor. I think they go on the defensive side of the ball here. The only reason I could see them going on offense is you got a couple good guard, center, interior lineman prospects, and you have your franchise quarterback. You want to protect him. He's a guy, he could be considered fragile. He can definitely run around a lot, Mariota, but I think they probably either go offensive guard, offensive center, or perhaps they go on the defense like Connor was saying. You got Harold Landry sitting there, and the only reason you jump is to maybe go ahead of one of those teams. You got the Patriots sitting there.
Yeah, and it makes sense. You mentioned makes sense to go defense for them. We just got word that the pick is in. And with the number 22 pick, the Tennessee Titans have taken Rashaan Evans. Connor, you just mentioned him, linebacker out of Alabama. This guy has been named a permanent captain by his teammates at Alabama, which to me says they respect him, they respect the leadership he brings, and down the stretch, he was big time for the Rolling Tide on defense. He tied the team record in tackles for the season. He was a team-leading 74 tackles. This guy can roam the field. He can be everywhere, and I think he's a really big difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. What do you guys think? Does this move make sense for the Titans?
Mike Vrabel's going to love this guy. He's great in space. That's what allowed him to collect so many tackles at Alabama. He ran a 4.36 in the 5.10-5 shuttle. So that just shows his great agility that he's got. He can go sideline to sideline. He can defend the pass. He's just an all-around great linebacker. A little undersized, which he's going to have to be wary of at the next level with bigger, better offensive linemen. So if he can avoid getting those linemen up on him and getting those blocks locked in, then he can be a really effective player in the league.
Light on his feet, leader of the Alabama defense. Avery Williamson, when he left in the offseason here, that opened up a hole there in inside linebacker. It's a good pick. I like the selection.
There you go. Let's talk now about the New England Patriots, who are on the clock here with the 23rd pick. Obviously a team that every year seems to be a Super Bowl contender, but like any other team, they're a team that has some holes that they could round out. Connor, what are the Patriots looking for, do you think, with this 23rd pick?
I think Josh Jackson is a great fit for them. I mean, he may not have been there, and you benched Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl. He's gone. You got to replace him with somebody for the full season. And Josh Jackson could be that guy. Obviously, we mentioned earlier, he's a ball hawk, ton of interceptions. He's a former high school receiver, which helps with that, ability. He's long. He can be a great weapon, especially low in the draft like this. He could have gone in the teens somewhere. He's still available for you. I think that's a great fit.
Yeah, I had him on my mock draft right there in the middle to even upper middle, possibly going 12, 13. So the fact that a guy like him is still on the board with the talent that he has, if you're the Patriots, that's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I think he steps right in there in Malcolm Butler's role. Again, a ball hawk like we've mentioned. I think he goes in. He seems to be a good coachable guy. Apparently, really great high character guy. Goes in, Bill Belichick coaches him up, fits in that secondary well.
Yeah, corners, it's become such a premier position in the league. And I'm surprised at him dropping this low, to be honest. You'd think with all the big money that's being spent on corners that they'd be going higher in the draft.
And you think he would be a good fit then for this Patriots defense? What about him do you think is going to mesh well with New England?
He's just a really long player. He's got long arms. He's one of the taller corners in the draft. And like Dan was mentioning, he doesn't have those real character issues. And that's something that could fit right in with New England, with how strict they keep it there and all that. So I think he's just a good fit all around, good player.
They're going to coach him up. He's long. That is the mold of the prototypical NFL quarterback in today's day and age. He's 6 foot. So again, that's some height that you want to have.
It makes sense to me too. The Patriots were ranked 31st last year when it came to the amount of, they were ranked 30th last year when it came to the amount of passing yards allowed. 31st when it came to rushing yards around. If you're a cornerback, of course, you have a say and you have the ability to make a play on both a ball in the air and a ball on the ground. So if you can get an impact player at corner right now, if you're the Patriots, it seems to make a lot of sense to shore up those weaknesses, if you will.
For sure, yeah. I mean, their big thing is defense. They need defense. They've never had a great defensive team for the most part. I mean, they've been middle of the pack at best. And so I think these picks have to keep going defense. Tom Brady, Gronk, they're going to figure it out on the offense. I think you got to go defense here.
Yeah, makes sense to me. And now that, I've got to ask you about this, now that we have the Packers fan back in the room, what did you think about the Packers pick?
So essentially, it turned out that it kind of works.
Yeah.
So they get Jair Alexander, who's an elite talent at corner. They need a corner. And they also could have used a safety in Derwin James. They passed on him, but they moved back up. And essentially what they're doing, they're getting a first-round pick for next year. They gave up their 3rd and 6th this year, and they got a 4th out of the first trade down. So there's a lot going on, but essentially they're moving from the 6th to the 4th with a pick, and they're moving from the 3rd to the 1st next year while moving back only 4 spots in the first round.
So long term, does this move make that was a lot?
There's a lot going on there
for me. I saw your face.
Nope.
Your face was what was going on in here. That's a lot of math for me, but it seems to make sense then for you.
I think it does. I mean, you would have liked to see them trade up with Aaron Rodgers' window. You don't know how much longer it's going to be there, and you would have loved to see them go get a Minkah Fitzpatrick type. They could have gotten a Derwin James type at 14. But they didn't do that. They got an elite talent in Jair Alexander. He's a great athlete, more of a zone coverage guy than a man-to-man guy. But maybe he can work on that and improve his press coverage in man.
Does this really now shake up what the Central looks like for next year, what their division looks like? I mean, obviously the Vikings looked great last year. Now that the Packers are starting to retool, they add Alexander at corner. Are we going to see a changing of the guards when it comes to who's in power in that division, or are things going to be relatively the same for next year?
I mean, the Packers have owned that division for a while. Yeah. The Vikings are going to be there. They have Kirk Cousins. They have a stout defense. They've got a stout running game with Dalvin Cook when he comes back. And they're going to be a challenge. The Packers, if they get Aaron Rodgers back, that's going to add them wins. So I think it's a 2-team division. Sorry to Jake Reitma out there with the Lions, but I don't think that they're going to contend. So, and sadly, the Bears won't either for a couple more years, I think, until Trubisky really gets it going. So I think it's those two teams, the Packers and Vikings.
Seems to make sense to me. Seems to make sense to me. We've seen a lot happen so far in the draft tonight, a lot of trades going back and forth. Connor, you just talked about the Packers, how they're looking to use those trades in the future. Dan, which trade to you thus far tonight has seemed to make the most sense for a team in the future?
For a team in the future, I know I said I was surprised by the Saints pick, obviously, but Davenport seems like a guy who's a project, who's going to be a stud in a year or two, maybe even this year. I like that pick. It seems like I have trust in the Saints front office as well. If they're going to move up 13 picks to go after a pass rusher, they must really, really believe in that pass rusher, and especially for a guy who's a little bit raw maybe. If you're talking about future, he's a guy you pick now. He's better later. It's a good future pick.
Yeah, Marcus Davenport's a guy, few years, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, he could be one of the premier edge rushers in the game. He might just need a little time to develop.
Yeah, seems to make sense to me. What we're noticing in tonight's draft, a lot of teams, it seems, in their war room know their guy. They know who they want to get. Dan, it's like what you brought up earlier on in the show, that when the pick is made in the war room, there's no telling how far they're going to go in order to get their man. And it seems like that's been a pretty consistent trend this evening, has it not?
It has, and it reminds me, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, big Atlanta Falcons fan. For the past few drafts, I've been like, Keanu Neal, no, he's supposed to get drafted in the late first. Ends up being an absolute stud. Vic Beasley goes 8th overall a couple years ago, ends up being a Pro Bowler, leading the league in sacks a couple years in. You have to have trust in these guys. Like NFL evaluators, for the teams, they know what they're doing. They've seen these guys on a regular basis, except I guess the Browns usually. But for the most part, you got to trust them when they move up to get their guy. All the fans are going to be up in arms. It's the same thing you see in like the NBA. Kristaps Porzingis, fans are all upset. Guess what? They knew what they were doing. These teams, for the most part, know what they're doing. So I trust it, and I think that's something we're going to continue to see throughout the night. Teams moving up to get their guy, even if Kuiper, McShay, the experts didn't see it coming.
And it looks like the Patriots NFL experts, their team experts, have gone in on their 23rd pick. And it's going to be Isaiah Wynn, offensive lineman for Georgia. It looks to me like the Patriots are making this move in order to shore up the pass protection possibly for Tom Brady. As that man continues to age, you want to protect the golden arm, if you will. And also, the Patriots last year could use an improvement in their rushing game. Maybe this offensive tackle or this offensive lineman in Wynn is going to be the guy that starts to open up holes. What do you guys think of this pick? Patriots going offense rather than defense.
Very good pick. I think you're shoring up that interior offensive line a little bit, maybe improve the rush game. Now look, Georgia, they get a lot of credit. Their backs get a lot of credit. Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, they get a lot of credit for playing very well, rushing yards galore. But this guy Wynn has been a stud all year. Question marks with him right now. He tore his labrum towards the end of the season. He's going to be out for a little bit of the start of training camp. Hopefully he'll be ready to start the season. That's one thing to watch for.
And the upside with Wynn is there. He's very versatile. He played all along the Georgia offensive line. He's going to probably play guard for New England. He's only 6'3", so he's shorter than most of the tackles. But he did play some tight end as a freshman. He made an appearance as a backup tight end as a freshman at Georgia. So that just shows you the kind of athleticism that this guy can bring to the table. And yeah, it's not the flashy skill position pick, but the game starts with both lines.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Speaking of flashy skill positions, I'm not sure there's a bigger and flashier man under center than Cam Newton, and his Carolina Panthers are on the clock right now for the next pick. To bring us the latest on where the Panthers may go are obviously Nick Mantis and Eric Alcantara outside on the big board. Guys, talk to me. What do you think the Panthers are thinking as they're now on the clock?
Welcome back to the big board. It's your big board guys, Nick Mantis, Eric Alcantara. All right, so now we got Carolina. This is going to be interesting to see. They're do some wide receivers here. They want to protect, that QB a little bit more. They want to do Justin Reed, a thumper, out of the Bay Area, out of Stanford and stuff. Who you got Carolina picking?
I think they may be finally the team that takes Calvin Ridley. Look, they need playmakers on offense. Let's face it, Devin Funchess as your number one receiver isn't going to get the job done, at least not for me. Cam Newton needs people to throw to, I think. I think you can only ask him to do so much, and if you want to keep him from taking off on those design runs, then you need to have pass catchers ready to catch those passes.
Yeah, I want to say that's one of the biggest things that we saw out of Cam Newton this past year was that he was getting hurt. The biggest concern for Carolina is having that protection. James Daniels out of Iowa could be, not your typical, say the biggest guy, in the room, but definitely has the ability to, to protect Cam in that sense. I could see them taking Justin Reed just because he's on the board and he's an incredible defensive asset that Carolina could take. So, out of these two guys, if you had to do Ridley or Moore right now, who are you taking?
I'm still taking Calvin Ridley. I think the hate on Calvin Ridley's gone too far. This guy played phenomenal at Alabama. I think that he's got the traits of a true playmaker. Take the guy. Take the guy with the true talent, right?
I hear you. Yeah, if you have that ability, coming with guys out of Alabama, you can say with Amari Cooper, other guys like that who automatically are going to make something happen when it comes on the offensive side of the ball. Definitely looking at that. So we're around here, the big board, taking the hater rate out of our mouths and putting everything down. We'll get it back to you guys and do some more analysis for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. And yes, we will do some more analysis for you because these guys have a couple more things to say about the latest draft pick win before we move on and address what you've brought up about Carolina Panthers. So thank you so much for that. But Connor, there was something that you wanted to say before we cut to the big board.
Yeah, so one of the biggest stories of the pre-draft process has been Shaquem Griffin, and he's the one-handed linebacker hybrid from UCF. And he played with Isaiah Wynn in high school at Lakewood in St. Petersburg. So there's a little connection there. I don't think that Shaquem will get drafted tonight. He will go eventually, but there's just a little cool connection there. Isaiah Wynn and Shaquem Griffin, high school teammates.
It's wild, yeah.
Another cool connection, Shaq Mason was drafted by the Patriots a couple years ago out of Georgia Tech. He's going to be on that interior defense or offensive lineman with Wynn, Georgia product. It's kind of interesting. Not a sexy pick, but still a really good pair there. You got good old-fashioned hate.
Yeah, no, it seems like those two picks were definitely the reliable picks. They may not have been the sexiest, but they were the most reliable. As Nick just mentioned out there, Nick and Eric for the Carolina Panthers are leaning more towards Calvin Ridley. It's clear that the Panthers need to pick up possibly a wide receiver to give Cam Newton more options. Ridley, at least to me, compared to a guy like DJ Moore, seems more like Mr. Reliable, given just simply the amount of catches that he made under Alabama. He is one of two guys for Alabama, I believe, correct me if I'm getting this stat wrong, but I believe he's one of two guys in Alabama history to have over 100 receptions in his career with the Crimson Tide, which is really impressive. That shows that they trust him. What do you guys think? Are they going to go, the Panthers, with a guy like Calvin Ridley? If we're talking wide receivers here, Calvin Ridley or DJ Moore?
I think it depends. Are you going the safe pick? You also didn't mention there Cortland Sutton, who's been converted SMU guy, huge, big hands, strong, could be a good jump ball candidate. But when you look at it, depends on what they're looking for. Do they want the polish? Do they want the route running? Then you go Ridley. If you want the speed, maybe the scat, which I think they got some last year in Samuel, you go Moore. I think they do go Ridley here if they address the wide receiver position just because they need to beat some good corners in that NFC South.
Yeah, Ridley's a very polished route runner. He gives them something different. A lot of Cam Newton's offenses they've had in the past, they had Kelvin Benjamin, big-bodied receiver, just kind of throw jump balls to him. Devin Funchess, big-body receiver. Calvin Ridley's a much slighter frame, but he's a great route runner, gets separation. He didn't run well at the Combine, which is probably why he's dropped so much, but there's a lot of receivers that haven't run at the Combine. DeAndre Hopkins ran a 4.57 at the Combine, and he is a star receiver. And then you look at some of these other guys. John Ross last year he broke the record in the Combine, and he didn't do much as a rookie. So I wouldn't put too much into the 40 times in that. He plays well on the field. He looks fast on the field. He can get separation, and I think that's very valuable.
All right, guys, the pick is in. We were right on one front. Carolina Panthers did select a wide receiver, but they selected DJ Moore out of Maryland. Moore has been the top receiver for the Terps throughout the past few years. This is a guy with a lot of speed. He can make men miss, and he's been an electric talent that a lot of people have been looking at as one of the top wide receiver prospects in this class. He goes above a guy like Cortland Sutton tonight. He goes above Calvin Ridley. What do you guys make of the decision to draft DJ Moore?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. DJ Moore is a great athlete. Interesting. He was the Big Ten Receiver of the Year last year, and he did it with 4 different quarterbacks throwing him the football. He had a school record 80 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's just a great athlete, run after the catch. He can be dynamic off of bubble screens, short passing. He can turn a hitch into a touchdown. I mean, he's just a dynamic athlete. Cam Newton just puts the ball in his hands and let him go to work.
Reminds me a lot of T.Y. Hilton from a few years ago, a guy that has the elusiveness, has the moves, very fast. I like the pick a lot, as you said. Also very reliable, 3-year starter, predictable. He also apparently has very, very, very off-the-charts high character. So that's another thing to look at. I think they made a good pick here. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't go with someone with a little bit more polished route running in Ridley.
Yeah, I think you see his future. He's more in the slot, kind of like a former Terrapin, Stephon Diggs for the Minnesota Vikings. Very similar players in a way, and I think that they could end up playing similar roles for their respective teams.
Yeah, this is the first wide receiver that we've now seen go off the board in this draft. Are you guys surprised that it's taken so long? Or is this right about where you started to see the wide receivers come off the board?
We knew that they weren't going to go as early as they have been. Last year there were 3 inside the top 10 in Mike Williams, Corey Davis, and John Ross. We knew that they were probably going to go in the 14, 15 range when they, one or two were going to start going off the board. But so this is probably a little late, but not too out of the realm of expectations.
I expected this. Most of the mock drafts I looked at were projecting these guys to fall into the early 20s, late teens. But I am surprised because I think both of these guys are more polished and better receivers coming into the NFL than any of those 3 guys drafted in the top 10 were last year.
That's interesting. In that case, then, why do you think they fall to the bottom? Because if they are more polished, like you said, maybe teams would want them higher up in the draft, or is it just that those teams higher up in the draft weren't looking for wide receivers?
It's team need. Yeah. Obviously, that's one thing. And then another thing, they're always drafting for potential. You look at a guy like Mike Williams last year, big, strong, showed he could really play with Clemson moving into the playoffs. Corey Davis, same thing, very, very, very talented. And then John Ross obviously lit up the combine, breaking the record set by Chris Johnson many years ago. So you look at those guys, they had the numbers, they had the flashy statistics, they had some of the things that you'd look like, oh, these guys have this and that. I think these other 2 guys have the intangibles.
Yeah, I mean, those guys last year, they were all physical freaks. They performed well at the combine. You see that potential, and that excites teams. Calvin Ridley, you know what you're getting, and I think he's going to be solid. DJ Moore, he should be solid. They've produced at the college level, but some of them just didn't test well, didn't show enough on tape maybe, and couple that with some team needs, and they just kind of fall.
It seems to me too. You say Calvin Ridley, he might be going soon, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. We've all been shuffling papers up here quite a bit on the desk to stay up to date, but the Baltimore Ravens have the next pick after the trade that was made. And one of the biggest things that they could be looking for is a wide receiver in order to give Joe Flacco some more weapons from within the pocket. And Calvin Ridley, obviously, is a guy that could come to mind due to his reliability, his incredible route running, and just his ability to make big plays happen when they need to happen. So, the Ravens are on the clock, you guys. Do you think that they're going to go and draft a wide receiver? There are still a couple of amazing guys on the board, Ridley, Sutton, or are they going to go defense? Where do you see them taking this pick?
I think they go Calvin Ridley. They had the 29th ranked pass offense last year. They need some help. Joe Flacco needs some help. Are they going to prove, hey, is Joe Flacco a franchise starter? Or is he going to have a bad year with some offensive weapons and then maybe they'll be drafting a quarterback next year? They need to address that offense. I think they go Calvin Ridley here.
Yeah, I think that's likely too. They did bring in Michael Crabtree, but he's not a long-term solution. Dan just mentioned they might sign a quarterback or bring in a quarterback next year. Maybe they go Lamar Jackson. He's a dynamic weapon that could be used as a quarterback, and he could very well go here.
It seems to me that either way you go, if you go quarterback or wide receiver, you're addressing the biggest issue that the Baltimore Ravens are facing, Dan, like you mentioned, which is the passing game. I mean, they were last in the league this past year in yards per attempt at 5.1, which is, for passing, that's rough. I mean, you'd like to see that on the running game, but to see it with the ball in the air, you need to make some improvements there to compete.
Right, and Ridley is a guy maybe not as elusive as DJ Moore after the catch, but he can make that first guy miss, and he's a very popular pick. I think that he's going to be someone that he can be a go-to #1 receiver immediately, as if in similar way to like Amari Cooper came in. Very polished, solid first couple years.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Baltimore's defense is pretty solid. They have some lockdown defensive backs. They've got Jimmy Smith, they've got Eric Weddle, Tony Jefferson. So they've got some talent on that back end. They've got C.J. Mosley right in the middle there. I mean, they've got a decent defense set up. It's not maybe the Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs in their prime kind of defense, but it's a pretty solid defense. I think the focus needs to be on offense and giving that defense some help so they're not on the field as long and give them some points, so they don't have to hold teams below 20 every game.
No, I agree with you. And it's so hard to replace a defense as legendary as that Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs defense was. I don't know if you're ever going to get a defense that strong and that nasty ever again. I mean, it was comparable to the Steel Curtain when it came to just how much havoc they wrecked on offenses. It's incredible. So I agree with you guys. I feel like if you're Baltimore at this point, the biggest things that you can do are shore up your offense and give Joe Flacco some more weapons. And it seems now we're transitioning into that part of the draft where more guys on the offensive side of the ball are getting picked up. We had a lot of defensive picks, a lot of safeties and cornerbacks go in the mid rounds, and now we're starting to see more offensive. And that trend continues because with the 25th pick acquired from the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens now select Hayden Hurst, tight end for South Carolina. We didn't talk about tight ends just now, but to me this makes a lot of sense because one thing we mentioned with Calvin Ridley was his ability to be reliable. Hayden Hurst is a very reliable tight end, very good hands. This guy can run routes efficiently, and he's also a solid blocker. He really made some people look a second way at South Carolina once he caught the football. So this to me makes sense. It's a way to shore up your offense. Good pick by the Ravens. And that is the 25 pick for us, which means it's time to go to a commercial break. We've been through 25. There are only 7 picks left in this first round, so don't go anywhere.
Why hang around waiting for opportunity to knock when instead you can track opportunity down and knock on its door? You might ask, what's the best way to identify where opportunity lives? Here's a hint. Its door is colored purple. Northwestern University. Opportunity awaits your knock.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Why spend your entire life looking for some on-ramp to the road to opportunity when there's already a well-traveled path? So you may be wondering, what does that path look like? Is it paved with gold? Well, here's a hint. It's actually paved with purple. Northwestern University. Your road starts here.
Why hang around waiting for opportunity to knock when instead you can track opportunity down and knock on its door? You might ask, what's the best way to identify where opportunity lives? Here's a hint. Its door is colored purple. Northwestern University. Opportunity awaits your knock.
Hello everybody, we are back now with the final 7 picks of the NFL draft. I can't believe that they've all gone by so soon, the first 25, but we made it to the last segment of the evening, so thank you for staying with us. The first round now is really starting to take shape, so let's hear from Olivia Reiner in the studio on what to expect for these last 7 picks. Olivia?
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. You're right. We've been through a lot tonight, and if you can remember all the way back to picks to pick 6 through 10, I thought that the theme ought to be seeing more teams trading up. And now I'm thinking for the last few picks here, I'm seeing teams maybe trading down. So Pittsburgh in particular being one of them. Philadelphia, New England, you're not seeing them on this graphic here, but still last 2 picks there. Could all be looking to trade down if they don't get the fit that they want. The Steelers may be looking to replace Ryan Shazier after his career-threatening spinal contusion, but they might try to avoid reaching this round. With New England, Bill Belichick is known to pull off some pretty impressive trades in the draft, so I could see the Patriots trading away this one. Philadelphia doesn't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick and not too many pressing needs, so they may trade down and draft a running back or a tight end. Just some theorizing, so let's see if any of this comes to fruition. Back to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Olivia. Let's talk now about the pick that we just saw go down. Hayden Hurst, tight end, going to the Baltimore Ravens. And the reason why I've got to bring this, actually, before I do that, I've just been told by someone in the control room with a lot of power that the next pick is official and that the Atlanta Falcons have drafted Calvin Ridley, wide receiver out of Alabama. We've been talking about him quite a bit this evening as a guy who is a reliable route runner, has tied a record for some of the most incredible plays we've seen from Alabama football. He is only one of 2 guys to have over 100 receptions in his career for the Crimson Tide. He has now found a home with the Atlanta Falcons. So I was going to talk about Hayden Hurst, but this is a great topic of conversation as well. Guys, what are we thinking about Calvin Ridley going to Atlanta?
Can we say that the Atlanta Falcons may have a top receiving core, if not the top receiving core in the NFL? How about Calvin Ridley now playing outside the numbers with the likes of Julio Jones? Jake, there's a lot of options for Matt Ryan.
No doubt about that. Calvin Ridley, a guy so good at the deep ball, tracking the ball over his shoulder, that sort of thing.
It was well done.
We saw. Thank you. I can't do it with a real ball, so it looks much better, when there's not a ball coming in. But point being, we saw DJ Moore go a couple of picks in front of him, and this was a wide receiver class that wasn't the strongest. In fact, the first time since 2010 that we didn't see a wide receiver in the first 20 picks. But rest assured, I think both DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley are going to make an impact immediately at the next level.
This is fascinating, guys. We have seen 3 different members of the receiving side of the offense go in the last 3 picks. I mean, this is pretty cool. We're starting to see teams load up on offensive weapons late here in the first round.
It also kind of has that best available pick feel to it. Now that DJ Moore was selected earlier, now you've got a guy like Calvin Ridley available to help make this offense even better with Devontae Freeman now. It's a really good offense.
Some would even call them value picks.
There you go.
Do you think he's going to make an impact right away? Do we see Calvin Ridley coming in, starting with the Falcons, and leading to some production on offense?
I remember some of these older Falcons players. You look at Julio Jones and then Roddy White, a guy to kind of complement him. Again, another outside the numbers guy. So that's my guy. I think it's a top 2 receiver pick for them with a guy like DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley again. Probably the best available at this point in the draft for Atlanta.
And I think Julio Jones last year felt some of that pressure, having to be the only viable option at times, and teams would just blanket him in coverage, and even one of the most talented wide receivers this league has seen in a while couldn't do much on the offensive end. So you throw that compliment in with Ridley, it'll be fun to watch.
And how much can Mohamed Sanu do for you? And then Taylor Gabriel. They're just such different receivers than Julio Jones, and then Calvin Ridley, your big, strong, athletic receiver.
And they're going to bond over the fact that they both went to Alabama, right?
And now we're both playing outside the numbers. We have to think he's going to be on the outside.
Can they be defended in a phone booth?
Yeah. We'll find out.
One big target who probably wouldn't even fit in a phone booth is Hayden Hurst. We got to talk about him landing with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, this guy is a unique prospect. He's 25 years old, was actually drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. So he's a former baseball player. I didn't know if you knew that. He was a Bucko back in the day, and he set a school record, single-season school record, for most receptions by a tight end at South Carolina. This is a guy who's had a huge impact on the Gamecocks program. Do you see him having a big impact now with the Ravens?
It's another option for Joe Flacco, right? And as he gets to be a little older, as he starts to recover from those injuries, you have to think there's going to be more check down patterns rather, for a guy like Joe Flacco. Maybe not throwing the ball as far, but maybe some more of the intermediate routes for a guy like Hayden Hurst to run to add to this team.
It's a good point, and here's what I'll say about Hayden Hurst, guys. It's flashy, it's sexier to be a great pass-catching tight end, which he is, obviously, with the school record, but he also commits to being a solid run blocker. Yes, the highlights are going to be of him scoring touchdowns, and rightfully so. So dangerous catching balls as a tight end, but he makes that commitment to be an additional run blocker, which you don't see a lot of tight ends do, especially when they're so good at catching.
Earlier on in Dennis Pitta's career, another tight end for this Baltimore team, I thought the Ravens thought he was going to be the guy. Dennis Pitta gets hurt. We saw Todd Heap get hurt towards the back end of his career at this tight end position, which I think takes more hits than we think. I mean, look at Rob Gronkowski constantly going down with injuries. They need Hayden Hurst not only to contribute, guys, but to stay healthy, I think most importantly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's such a big concern in the league nowadays, is the health of players, making sure that their careers can be as long as they can possibly be and they can stay as productive as they can. And Jake, you know, I love what you said about him focusing on blocking just as much as he focuses on catching the football, because to me, that spells unselfish. And I feel like that is a trait that you want out of anyone that you pick up on your football team, someone who is willing to put their own personal glory to the side because it's about the team. I mean, you've played years of football. You know that those guys, when you have them in the locker room, they're the glue, right?
No doubt about that. And when you see a guy, like you said, that's willing, because so much of it is effort, so much of it is attitude, mentality, wanting to be that additional guy on the line that's doing more than just running out for passes. And take it from a Lions fan, someone that has had plenty of experience with bad prima donna tight ends, and most recently, obviously, Eric Ebron. I hope that Hurst has a much better start to his career than Ebron did.
And talk about a smooth transition, right? Learning from guys like Joe Flacco, now Robert Griffin III, some real veteran players in this league to help you adjust to play in the NFL. That can only help him.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And the Seahawks, you know, are coming up with this next pick after the trade that they made. They have a lot of good veteran presence in their locker room as well, obviously, led by Russell Wilson, the man with the brawn razor, as we all know him. He has been slinging the ball around the NFL for years. For you guys now, looking into this 27th pick with the Seattle Seahawks, what are the holes, do you think, that they need to shore up with this pick late in the first round?
You could go offensive line to protect Russell Wilson. Every time we watch the Seahawks, he's running for his life. Plenty of offensive linemen still on the board. I think about Will Hernandez out of UTEP specifically. But if you want to go defensively, Darren, there's still some good cornerbacks out there.
I mean, we've talked about some of these corners of the likes of a guy like Josh Jackson out of Iowa, really talented player. Also, I look on the offensive line. I'm actually going to side with you here. I look at a guy of like James Daniels, also another Iowa Hawkeye, along with Josh Jackson, to help protect Russell Wilson, even though his style is getting out of the pocket, you know, but at the same time, you need those offensive linemen to protect you, to give you time to extend those plays.
And speaking of sexy picks, the offensive line, if there's such thing, the sexy offensive line pick is the left tackle. Could we see 3 centers go in the first round? I mean, I'm sure our research team is crunching the numbers and digging out when the last time that happened was, but I know it's been a while, but you saw my Lions go with the center. Could the Seahawks go that way and draft a center?
In the offseason, they did add DJ Fluker, again, another offensive lineman. So they're making an effort, right? They're actively trying to protect Russell Wilson, but this is an interesting pick.
No, I absolutely agree with you. It seems to me like the Seahawks have a lot of freedom in how they choose to go about this pick. You could shore up the offensive line, but as we know, they just lost Richard Sherman, and we don't know if they're going to be able to replace him as well at a cornerback position, so that's interesting.
Hey, but as long as Pete Carroll's in his custom Nike Monarchs on the sidelines with those dad shoes coaching up the Seahawks, I like their chances.
I got to get in here, Jake. I love that. But with the 27th pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Rashad Penny, running back for San Diego State. We did not talk about a running back going to the Seahawks at all. In fact, when I was laying out my mock drafts, I thought really only 2 running backs were going to go in the first round, and that was going to be Saquon and possibly Geis from LSU. Rashad Penny, this is a huge pick for the Seattle Seahawks. One I'm sure that you guys didn't expect. What are your thoughts?
Can we just fire everyone that's done a mock draft? Me being the first one.
I'll go.
We'll raise our hands.
Yeah, can you get me off the payroll? I do not deserve to be compensated for that mock draft.
You're on a payroll?
Yeah, you guys.
I'm not on a payroll.
I'm an Arizona style. You know, I'm one of those guys that gets paid. But point being, I can't believe even guys like Nick Chubb or Sony Michel, Ronald Jones out of USC. These are all running backs that we had ranked higher, and I'm quite frankly floored with this pick. But more power to him.
Yeah, it takes some pressure, hopefully, if you're a Seahawks fan, off the legs of Russell Wilson. Maybe make him do a little less, give him the opportunity to hand the football off a little bit more. So I think this pick, of course, is obviously going to help the rushing attack for sure, but maybe also helps out Russell Wilson protecting his longevity. For a guy that likes to get out of the pocket and extend plays, it's going to take a toll on your body. You're going to get hit a little more. Maybe this pick keeps Russell Wilson in the pocket a little more.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a very good point. And now we're transitioning out of the Seahawks into your very own Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to send it out to the guys at the big board. Nick and Eric, you do have a little bit of pressure on you because we have the Steelers' biggest fan right here. So what are your thoughts about what they're going to do with the 28th pick?
All right, guys, well, we're coming all the way down. We're going to look at the Steelers pick right here. As we like to say around here, WTP, welcome to Pittsburgh. All right, we got some guys in our crew who are from this great city. Now, they are in need of an inside linebacker after the Shazier injury. They're trying to see who is going to be able to stop the rush, who's going to be able to be that captain of the defense. Not too many who are available right now in the first round who you'd make your first round pick. So these other guys, tell me about them and what you're thinking with those ones.
Well, Josh Jackson's kind of a different corner compared to some of the other ones that have gone off the board so far. He's a bit longer. It's really the arms. I think the only concern and why he's dropped this far is that his coverage skills were really only held up through one season of starting. So, you know, he might be just a one-hit wonder. Teams might be afraid that he's going to kind of bottom out after joining the pro league. Cortland Sutton, he might be kind of a reach himself because he is kind of now the 3rd best receiver on the board after Calvin Ridley and DJ Moore have come off. And, you know, finally Will Hernandez. I've been, you know,
that's your guy.
I've been saying this guy's name all night long, and no one seems to want him. You know, I know he played at a small school.
Sure.
But he's just such a mauler in the run game. And look, the Steelers, they want to protect Ben Roethlisberger for as much as they can, for as long as he's around. They still want to run the ball effectively with Le'Veon Bell and James Conner. So I think any of these guys would do well for the Steelers.
Well, we got options for Ben to throw to. We got options for Ben to be protective of all the way down at UT El Paso. So whether or not Hernandez is going to be the Steelers pick, we'll have to find out. Back to those guys at the desk doing an awesome job. Take it away.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate the compliment, my man. I've been throwing a lot your way, so I appreciate it. Now, we're talking Steelers, and there's no one I know in this program that knows the Steelers better than the man to my left. That's right, Mr. Darren Zaslow. Darren, what do you think they're going to do with this pick, buddy?
As a season ticket holder.
Sick brag, dude. Sick, dude. Sick, dude.
Is that biased journalism?
Yeah. Listen, the guys outside make a great point, without a doubt, but this team needs a middle linebacker. When you lose Ryan Shazier, the way that the Steelers did last year, they need someone to fill his shoes. Ryan Shazier was the fastest player on this team. People don't even realize that. I think the Steelers go to the linebacker position here with a guy like Harold Landry out of Boston College. This was a middle linebacker that analysts thought could go in the top 3 among middle linebackers behind Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds, and he's fallen all the way. This is one of the biggest stories, that he's fallen all the way potentially to this pick. I think if you're Pittsburgh, you have to go with Harold Landry.
I mean, I trust your judgment, obviously, but there's been way too many compliments being thrown around this set, and it's kind of making me uncomfortable. So I think I got to get back into that comfortable state of mind where we rip one another. So I'm going to say you're completely wrong.
Okay.
They got to shore up the offensive line just to throw a little wrinkle in here, because the compliments are kind of making me feel a little bit uncomfortable.
So no more patting each other on the back.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. You know,
go back to the rejecting pinky promises.
Exactly. You know. Being nauseated from agreeing with each other, that sort of thing. What are some other past ones we've had?
Oh my goodness, the no singing one.
Yeah, that's big.
But you broke your own rule earlier this broadcast. You started singing the Notre Dame fight song.
I had to beat you to a punch.
Just saying.
Oh, do you want me to talk now? No, I'm just kidding. I think both of you guys are definitely on to something here. I think the inside linebacker position is definitely a position that the Steelers need to shore up because they ranked 27th last year in the NFL on rush yards allowed per carry. That's something that you get a strong inside linebacker in there like Harold Landry. That's something that I think you could really be strong for the Steelers. Also, their offensive line, because if someone like Big Ben is talking about retiring because he gets hit so often, you probably want to protect that man. I mean, he probably has the keys to the city at this point.
They did add a safety in the offseason, going with Morgan Burnett, who was signed to a 3-year contract from Green Bay. So the secondary could be an area that they want to add to. It could be, again, that best available pick if they go for the likes of a guy like Josh Jackson.
I just want Big Ben to unblock me on Twitter. So if you could,
He's blocked you on Twitter.
He has.
Wow. What did you do?
I don't know. I mean, he's blocked a lot of people. I think he's got someone running his Twitter, but I've got a lot. I have that in common with a lot of well-known Big J's out there. So I kind of take pride in the fact that Big Ben has blocked me on Twitter. So, but as a season ticket holder, could you kind of
right
get the ball rolling on that?
The next pick has been announced. The Steelers have selected with the 28th pick Terrell Edmunds, a safety from Virginia Tech and the older brother of the Tremaine Edmunds. Thank you.
Hey,
oh my gosh. It's been a long time on the set, man. It just escaped my head for a second. This is a big pick. We didn't talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers going to a safety or trying to upgrade their secondary because to me it seemed like a lot of where they struggled on defense last year was the run game, not necessarily the pass. What do you make of this pick?
Well, now that Mike Mitchell is gone, it leaves a huge hole at the safety spot. I just talked about Morgan Burnett coming over from Green Bay. I like that move for the Steelers. But again, with injuries, we've seen this secondary have injuries in the past. We've seen the likes of Sean Davis from Maryland step up. He's had some bright spots, but has had his inconsistencies. So again, the secondary seems to be the Achilles heel of this Steelers team. This move is trying to add some depth to that position.
Yeah, and this is a draft class that was loaded with talent at the safety position or the secondary in general. So at this point, I think when you start to have these different picks that are kind of coming unexpectedly, you have to kind of chalk that up to the amount of players that are still available in the late first round.
Guys, I'd be ashamed if I didn't mention this, but Ryan Shazier was the one who announced this pick for the Steelers, and he walked across the stage. How incredible is that?
It's great to see, number one. And, you know, for a guy that has been ruled out for this year, just to bring that, you know, positivity and inspiration ultimately to the NFL draft. That's a great thing to see.
I mean, when it comes down to it, in all seriousness, that's what it's all about. You saw him at the Ohio State spring game as well, to your point, providing that inspiration, that camaraderie to his alma mater, which is neat to see as well.
Man, speaking of inspiration, let's talk about a team that brought inspiration to a city that really hasn't gotten the chance to feel a lot of hope and inspiration in the past couple of years. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the next pick at number 29, making the playoffs this year, obviously turning some heads with the run that they made. What do you guys see as the biggest holes that the Jaguars need to shore up with this pick here at 29?
It's crazy to me that we're here, 2018, talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars as one of the most complete rosters from top to bottom in the NFL. And they made the investment in Blake Bortles with Lamar Jackson still lurking, still available. So I don't think they're going to go that way. I'm honestly, and based on the last couple of picks, we got to start expecting the unexpected, so to speak. I am floored at where they might go with this.
You bring up the run that they went on, and how about their run game, a top run game, the top run game in the National Football League, of course, with Leonard Fournette, who was unbelievable. We've talked about the offensive line a lot in the NFL draft. I think that comes into play once again. Why was Blake Bortles good in the playoffs? Because he had protection.
Because he was going against your Steelers?
Okay, all right.
Did I just set you off? I'm trying to fire you up.
Yeah, he had time to throw the football. And when he does have time, he's an average to a slightly above average quarterback. Maybe they go back to help that two-headed monster with Blake Bortles when he has time, and of course, to give Leonard Fournette some more running room.
You make a great point, because I really felt like Jacksonville brought that new kind of new school or old school, depending on how you look at it, brand of football, because we fall in love with the quarterback and the vertical passing game down the field, and rightfully so. But they reminded us that there's something to be said about a team that can smack you around up front, run the football, and play some of the best defense in the league.
A lot of check down passes, not a lot of, let's expand the playbook for Blake Bortles, not a lot of long passes down the field, but I will say this, again, if you can find some more time for him to throw the football, you might be able to open up that playbook. With Allen Robinson now gone, Allen Hurns gone, right? Marquise Lee is probably now your guy, your top receiver. So we'll see what they want to do. Offensive line, though, definitely in play for this pick.
And that's something that I have here on my note sheet. I've got potential picks for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I've got Hayden Hurst. Oops. I've got Isaiah Wynn. Oops. And I've got Jair Alexander. Looks like all three of those guys are off the board.
I don't think they're going to take any of those.
I don't think they're going to. I think that's safe. That might be
Spoiler.
the safest pick we make all night.
We talked about James Daniels a little earlier on, I think a couple picks ago, a center from Iowa. Again, that's an offensive line spot that you can fill a really talented player in the Big Ten. That's a guy that you can keep an eye on, but you have to find a way to fill that offensive
If I'm Jacksonville, I go with Will Hernandez, just purely because of the way he plays the offensive line position. We talk all the time about a mean streak. If you're an offensive lineman, take out the streak part. This guy is just the meanest football player you will ever see. And maybe it will come back to haunt him here and there, pick up a personal foul playing after the whistle, that sort of thing. But the way he plays the game, that mentality, those are things you can't teach or coach.
And guys, the Jaguars are going to get another guy with that kind of mental tenacity with the number 29 pick. The Jaguars have selected Taven Bryant of the defensive tackle from Florida. This is a guy who made a lot of noise down south in the swamp for his play throughout the year for the Florida Gators. Definitely a guy up front that was turning a lot of heads, one of the top defensive line prospects in the draft. Interesting again to see him, a guy with this kind of size, this kind of speed, fall as late in the draft as he did. But it seems to me like a great pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to make their defense that much better with a guy like this.
They had the second best defense in the National Football League last year, giving up about 17 points per game, right behind Minnesota. I mean, pretty unheard of video game numbers from this Jacksonville defense, especially in terms of progression, how good that this defense has gotten. And now you get to add some more talent, on that defensive line to complement the likes of the secondary with guys like Jalen Ramsey, who likes to make a little noise. That smash mouth football, right, is on this Jacksonville defense.
Here's what I'll say about Brian, though. Interestingly enough, he only started 1 year at the University of Florida. Not that that's a red flag by any means, because he's got the long arms, tremendous speed, especially for a defensive lineman, which I don't know how many times a defensive lineman is going to run 40 yards uninterrupted, but his 40-yard dash was very impressive. And he's got that athleticism, but it's just kind of puzzling that he only started 1 year at Florida.
And I agree with you, because you got a guy like Maurice Hurst who's still on, or let's see if I'm getting that name right. Yes, Maurice Hurst who's still on the board. From Michigan, who has loads of experience with the Wolverines and has showed his excellence throughout his time in maize and blue.
I'm glad you said that, because when I first started digging into the notes, way in advance, never wait to the last minute by any means, but in all seriousness, about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, this was a guy that the Lions were talked about in the Detroit area, of thinking, oh, what a great story, the hometown kid from Ann Arbor coming right to Detroit at that number 20, Maurice Hurst being a fantastic talent, and all of a sudden you see him falling. He's had some health concerns, so that could possibly factor into it, but still a great talent.
And looking out into the future, right, the second, third, fourth rounds of this draft, maybe that wide receiver spot is an area that they want to fill, right? Listen, Marquise Lee had a good year last year at the wide receiver spot for Jacksonville, but is he really your top receiver? Is he really the guy that you want to trust as this season goes on, especially if you want to give Blake Bortles some more options? So take a look maybe down the line in this draft at the receiver position for Jacksonville.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Let's look towards the future now, towards the 30th pick. We've got the Minnesota Vikings now on the clock, a team that had an entire nation chanting "Skol" as they marched their way through the play. Yeah, everybody together? There we go.
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it. I mean, this team
we nailed it, no?
I completely missed it.
Well, we expect that. Jordan and I were on the same
That's right, we were in sync.
Which, by the way, kudos, tip of the cap to you, man. I mean, you've been putting in the long hours, and you're still getting the skull chant. Great stamina by you.
Well, I made sure to stretch before, so the shoulder mobility was in.
Smart.
When you do your homework in advance, you know you're going to do the skull.
And you're still smiling, and most importantly, I can't relate to this, the hair is an 11 out of 10.
Oh, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Give your makeup artist a raise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go back to the Minnesota Vikings. There's so much flattery.
We're talking
in
about
this
the
room.
Vikings, aren't we?
We are. We are talking. We're talking about the Vikings. The pick is coming in soon. This is a team that, by all measures, last year had an absolutely incredible year. What are they going to do in this draft to make next year even better?
Well, Vikings fans should be smiling too, going all the way to the NFC Championship game, having the Minneapolis Miracle. I mean, it's a very interesting team with a ton of young talent. Again, when you look at the defense, right, best defense in the NFL in terms of points per game, it's 16. So is the defensive side of the ball where you want to go with your Minnesota? Not sure.
I'm not sure either, but it's a new look Minnesota team with the arrival of Kirk D. Cousins.
And it's a new look for this team in their 30th pick. They're selecting Mike Hughes, cornerback from Central Florida. This is a guy that has a very interesting road to the draft here. He did have some slight character concerns, right, transferring from UNC over to UCF before having a great couple of years with Central Florida. He's a cornerback, really dangerous in the return game. We talked about special teams, how that might starting to fade in its importance, but when you pick up a guy like Mike Hughes, you're going to pick up a guy who has the ability to return punts effectively and possibly kickoffs. So this is an interesting move for the Vikings. For me, it seems like a Swiss Army knife kind of a move. You're going to get a guy who doesn't do something extraordinarily well, but he does a lot of things very well.
And I think you saw his draft stock rise in that bowl game against Auburn, where he was up against some very, very good SEC talent, and he rose to the occasion. That tells NFL GMs, NFL front offices, that he has what it takes to play in big game situations. So I think Mike Hughes did himself a lot of favors on the first day of 2018.
And at the end of the day, he's versatile, right? So he saves you a spot if he can play defense and if he can return punts, be your special teams guy. I know special teams is your forte.
Yes,
How many times did you win special teams practice player of the week?
Hey, you know what? That hurts my feelings. You know, it really does. There's not a lot you can say that'll get me. That one got me.
But I do
twice to answer your question.
Now we're even. But
hey, I got it for real one time. That's sick.
But I do want to say this again. It saves you that roster spot. So now you don't need your punt return and kick return only player.
Would you
You've
send
got
it
a
back
guy
to Jordan already?
that can play.
Someone's picking up on my hints over here.
I'm
My
trying, man.
goodness.
I'm trying.
Jake, I appreciate you, buddy. We're through the first 30 picks in the draft. There are only 2 more. We're going to be right back after the break to discuss the 31st and 32nd picks. So enjoy a message from Northwestern University while you wait.
Go Cat.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern University, we are pioneering innovation and achieving excellence across every imaginable discipline. Northwestern University, the possibilities are endless.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We all are. Oh my God! It feels so good to be able to move my legs after those 2 hours of staying seated. But I got the barbershop quartet here with me on stage. All of the analysts are now here at the desk to talk about these last two picks and to recap the draft as a whole. Gentlemen, it's so good to have you up here. Let's talk briefly about the Patriots. The pick is in. We're not sure who it is yet. What do you see them doing with this pick?
Well, maybe Lamar Jackson here. Maybe they still have a crack at him and get their quarterback of the future. Not receiver. I'll let you know.
I mean, it's an interesting move regardless of what New England decides to do. Bill Belichick is going to find a way to win. They're going to have their analytics. They're going to do whatever they do to find the best player available. I may look on the defensive side of the ball. Haven't seen enough consistency with this New England Patriots defense of recent years. So maybe somewhere in the secondary.
I thought they were going to go Josh Jackson earlier today. They haven't. He's still available. They might go there. Like Darren said, go into the secondary, get yourself a ball hawk.
Yeah, let that be a lesson, too. Don't show up to the draft in a helicopter if you might not get taken in the first round, because that's just,
Gosh, I forget that he did that. He's been a name we've been talking about all day and haven't gotten to officially announce.
I know. The guy led the country in interceptions.
He's not wearing any ridiculous shoes, too, is he?
I mean,
I think that ship kind of sailed. He sounds like a guy that
in a helicopter
maybe isn't a Bill Belichick kind of guy, to be honest with you, now that I think about it, but we'll see.
It's a fair point. Not many guys really work well with Belichick that can ride into the draft on a helicopter.
Right.
But even Belichick's guys haven't been as happy as of late. I mean, we've seen all the comments in the media with Gronk and obviously with some of the known departures. But I still think Will Hernandez, he's on the board still. Great offensive lineman, plays with that mean streak. I would take him.
All right, guys. The pick is in for the New England Patriots, I've just been told. And with the number 31 pick, they're going with Sony Michel, the running back from Georgia. This is a very interesting pick to me. I mean, if you're the Patriots and you're looking to add, I guess, another tool to your offense, this makes a lot of sense because Sony Michel was probably out of between him and Chubb, the more electric running back at Georgia in recent years. He put up some incredible numbers during his time as a Bulldog, and now he gets to work with Bill Belichick as part of the Patriots. So, guys, what do you think of the move?
Look, we've seen Georgia produce really good running backs. We've seen Todd Gurley, right? And now you see Sony Michel. And again, this is a guy that is going to put himself in the place of a guy like Dion Lewis that we never know, can he stay healthy the full year? Dion Lewis, a smaller running back of size. It's an interesting pick for depth, I think, at that spot.
Yeah, well, and the Patriots, they love mixing up their backfield. They've got James White. They had Rex Burkhead last year. They love switching off with guys. They love versatile running backs. Sony Michel is versatile. He can run. He can catch out of the backfield. He can do a lot more than Nick Chubb. And Nick Chubb, he lost a little bit of his explosiveness when he had that pretty gruesome knee injury a few years ago. He's still a great player, but he's just not quite the same guy he is now. I think they're thrilled to have him rather than Rashad Penny.
I still think Darius Geis, out of LSU, I'm surprised that he is still on the board at that running back position. Even a guy like Ronald Jones out of USC. I know Sam Darnold took a lot of the spotlight on the offensive firepower, but chalk this one up as another running back we did not see coming.
I'm quite surprised. I think that as we've seen in the NFL, backs, you can get them in the second, third round. They had a guy like Blount that hasn't been like the super high pick himself. So I'm a little surprised by Sony Michel. He slid down boards apparently because of some knee concerns. Apparently he has some condition that could affect the longevity of his career. So I'm a little bit surprised, especially when they still have needs to address on defense.
They did re-sign Rex Burkhead over this offseason to a 3-year deal. So if you look at the future of this position for the Patriots, Burkhead's going to be one of those guys. You know he's going to play, and also can help groom Sony Michel because Burkhead's been in the league for a bit.
But to your point, in those Super Bowl runs, you see a guy come out of the backfield out of nowhere. They love the variety element that can beat you in a multitude of ways.
Guys, I've got another interesting update for you, which is that the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles have traded the number 32 pick, to the Baltimore Ravens. So some more movement from the Ravens in this draft. They are now on the clock. Rumor is Lamar Jackson.
Can I go with a different Jackson? Can we go with Josh Jackson at this point?
Please.
I mean,
He's cursed, man. He's cursed. He's not getting drafted in this first round. He's not going in this first round.
Really?
No way.
Why not?
He flew in on a helicopter. He's doomed. You cannot, he's not. I think it's going to be actually Lamar Jackson.
We jinxed him, too.
I think they're going to go with Lamar Jackson, a Heisman Trophy winner. Baltimore had a guy, had Troy Smith many years ago out of Ohio State, sort of a mobile quarterback. Maybe they'll actually have the success of the Troy Smith experiment. Maybe have Joe Flacco's successor here in Baltimore.
All right, guys, the pick is official. It looks like the Ravens have selected. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not official. It's just rumored again that they're speculating. We can keep
How much time do they have on the clock?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Lamar Jackson, what are we thinking? That's a speculation, of
Well,
course.
if it is in fact Lamar Jackson, kudos to this front office for Baltimore. I mean, there were rumors that they were going to have to take him at 16 to get Lamar Jackson, but if you're able to maneuver your way through the first round, make a trade so that you can have that additional pick and still get Lamar Jackson at the end of the first round, that's a success on draft day.
Connor, you were a receiver in college, and you're catching these balls from the quarterbacks. If they do take Lamar Jackson, they've got 3 capable quarterbacks on this team. You've got Flacco, RG3, who was signed in the offseason. Now Lamar Jackson. What do you think that adds to this team?
Well, I think next year Flacco is probably the guy, but going forward, I don't think they're committed to him long term. And Jackson is a dynamic playmaker. When you put the tape on him, he's just running by people. And that's in the ACC. That's not in the Sun Belt or the CUSA or anything.
Easy on those small conferences.
Hey, I'm from a small
I know, that's
conference.
what I'm saying.
I get it.
All right, guys.
We don't have speed there.
But it will free up a ton of cap room by not investing in Flacco long term.
And the pick is officially in now. The Ravens have selected Lamar Jackson, quarterback from Louisville. We've watched enough college football, I think, in recent years to know this man extremely well. He is a dual threat quarterback with incredible speed, Heisman Trophy winner. This is a guy who many believe could now be the future quarterback for the Ravens, someone who can bring a lot of new elements to this offense. I don't think this is a surprise. We've had a lot of surprises thrown at us this evening. This isn't one of them. What are your initial reactions?
Couple points here to make. Obviously, he's a project, right? Actually, a recent NFC offensive coordinator anonymously said he didn't think that Lamar Jackson was ever going to be an NFL passer. So that's one thing to take note of. The other thing is you have another guy like Michael Vick who comes in and said, he's 5 times better than I was when I was coming out of college. So look at those two things. There are a lot of opinions around on this guy. It looks like he's going to have time to figure it out. He has the skills. He's elite. 4.33 at his pro day, I think, in the 40. So look for this guy to maybe make some noise and potentially be a bust.
And an interesting note on this. So Baker Mayfield went number 1. Lamar Jackson, 32. The first round is bookended with 2 Heisman Trophy winners. And it's the 6th time ever that 2 Heisman Trophy winners have gone in the first round of the same draft.
And I think what surprises people, in addition to this pick, but with Lamar Jackson, is his arm strength. He threw 69 touchdowns. The big thing is how accurate is he? How precise can it be with those routes, throwing 27 picks over his college career?
Are we getting ahead of ourselves, though, guys, by saying quarterback Lamar Jackson? There was a lot of conversation about other scouts and that sort of thing saying he could be a valuable asset at a different position, but he pulled the Tim Tebow approach and was adamant about playing quarterback. I hope it works out better for him than it did for my guy Tim.
I think that's a good assessment there. I do feel like he came in saying the teams know I'm going to be drafted at quarterback. He wants to be a quarterback. If not, maybe he could be like a Hines Ward out of Georgia many years ago, go from being a college quarterback to a successful wide receiver and
Antoine Randall,
and then there's another one, Patriots. I want to say not
Wes
Randall,
Welker.
Wes Welker. There you go.
And early on in his career, I think that the Ravens could get creative and use him in a lot of wildcat-type packages. And he doesn't have to be the starter, but he doesn't have to be a receiver. They could just find some packages to use him in a unique way.
There's certainly a lot of possibilities with how the Ravens can use a weapon like Lamar Jackson going forward. And that, you guys, is the 32nd pick of the draft, which means we've officially made it through the first round, nearly 4 hours of draft coverage, 32 picks later. I'm going to ask 3 questions to sum it up for you guys. I want to hear everyone's opinion on this. I'm sure, as it always does here at Medill Sports Talk, will lead to some lively debate. First question, biggest surprise. There were so many surprise trades, surprise picks in the first round tonight. Which surprised you the most?
Got to go with the most obvious pick, Baker Mayfield going number 1. When you look beyond the numbers, and I know Baker Mayfield was incredible at Oklahoma, we get that, but are you NFL ready? Can you lead your team to a Super Bowl, right? Is Baker Mayfield that guy for you in a Cleveland offense with a ton of moving pieces at this point? I was surprised that they went with Baker Mayfield specifically over a guy like Sam Darnold.
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns, I mean, how surprising. It wouldn't be a Browns draft without the surprise picks, both at number 1 and at number 4. Right. But my surprise is that Bradley Chubb fell that far. And congratulations, John Elway. You didn't fall victim to taking a quarterback. We know you've done that years and years in the past, but you made the right decision by getting a steal in Chubb at that pick.
For me, my biggest surprise isn't a pick. It's a moment. Ryan Shazier walking across the stage and announcing the Steelers pick. That was just a really cool moment. And people were wondering if he would walk again after that hit. And it was just great to see, just a really cool moment. And yeah, that's my biggest surprise of the night.
For me, it's Perry being drafted by the Seahawks. I know you guys are probably just shocked in here to see that. I didn't have him in my notes this evening, so that's my biggest surprise, especially when you have guys like Chubb, Juice still left on the board.
Any surprises when it comes to who wasn't picked tonight? I think the obvious answer is the man who flew in a helicopter to the draft, but is there anyone else that comes to mind who you were surprised to not see go within these first 32?
We've heard as that 5th guy that could go in that first round. Mason Rudolph is a guy from Oklahoma State who I think is a very talented player. We've seen him again maybe towards the back end of that first round, second round. It's kind of hard to know, but that was that 5th guy to kind of round out this arms race that we've been talking about, the quarterback class. Mason Rudolph, I know he didn't get selected tonight, but that's a guy to watch moving forward.
For me, it's Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver out of SMU, and I know it was kind of a weak wide receiver draft to begin with, but he's a little bit raw, but I thought a team might take a chance on him. He can be that big possession wide receiver for you. Yes, a little bit of a project, but I think the investment and the risk was it wasn't as great as the reward that he could provide.
I'm shocked that Harold Landry didn't go. He, coming into this season, could have been a top 10 pick. He led the nation in sacks 2 years ago. He had some injuries this year, but he performed well at the combine, and it looked like he was going to go in the maybe 15 to 20 range, or maybe in the mid-20s, somewhere in there. So I'm surprised that he didn't go. He's an immense talent for someone on day 2.
I was also totally shocked that Harold Landry did not go in the first round tonight. Last year, in their way too early mock draft, Mel Kiper and these guys had him in the top 10, top 5. He was a stud coming out of Boston College after his sophomore year, led the nation in sacks. I figured, especially after a good combine, he would come out and be a first-round pick. Everyone loves edge rushers.
All right, guys, so we've talked about the biggest surprises. Let's go winners and losers now in the first round of this draft. We're going to reverse the order. Dan, I'm going to start with you.
All right.
Who was the biggest loser so far in the first round of the NFL draft?
The biggest loser to me is probably the Cleveland Browns. I don't like, I stick to my point that I really didn't like the Baker Mayfield pick at number 1 overall. I also was a little bit surprised by Ward. I thought you had better talent ahead of him that you could have gotten in the draft.
Yeah, for me, it's the Seattle Seahawks picking Rashad Penny. They could, if they wanted a physical, violent runner that kind of replicated Marshawn Lynch's style, Darius Geist was waiting for him, and he produced at LSU. He could have been that feature running back that could carry the ball 25, 30 times a game, and they just passed on him for Rashad Penny.
Yeah, really surprising. I mean, none of us saw that coming by any means, but as far as the biggest losers of the draft that we're talking about here, I'm really surprised that your Pittsburgh Steelers went the way that they did. I don't know if it's necessarily a losing pick yet, per se, but I think, and I don't know, maybe that's a stretch for me, but can you agree?
It was a surprising pick, though the Steelers, again, the Achilles heel of recent has been that secondary, especially on the defensive side of the ball. My biggest loser, I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts here. I think Quentin Nelson's a very good player. Again, you want to add some depth to that offensive line, but there's no guarantees with how Andrew Luck is going to play in his first full year back from all these injuries. He hasn't proved he can play really a full NFL season over the past couple of years, so I thought they might have gone with a skill guy to help out Andrew Luck.
All right, guys, and to wrap this up on a positive note, let's go biggest winners of the first round of the 2018 NFL Draft. And Dan, we'll start with you again.
If you end up with a franchise, a star quarterback, you're a winner. I believe that the Buffalo Bills ended up getting the best quarterback in this draft. Sat there, moved up a little bit for him. Josh Allen, they took him ahead of some other people. Big hands, mobile, superstar. And then they also picked up Edmonds, a guy who is very, very, very versatile, only 19 years old, maybe a little bit of a project, but a total stud coming out of Virginia Tech.
Yeah, the Bills had a good draft. I'm going to go with another quarterback that dropped, Josh Rosen. He went 10th overall, and he's already got a chip on his shoulder. He said that there were 9 mistakes in front of him in the draft. I liked him coming in. I like his demeanor, his intelligence. I already liked him coming in, and now with something to prove, I really like that pick for the Arizona Cardinals.
I like that pick by you because I also like where Arizona went with that. But I guess to shake things up a little bit, you went with them as your biggest loser. But I think the Cleveland Browns are the biggest winner because they went outside of what everybody thought they were going to do. And you said it, if you get a franchise quarterback, doesn't matter if it's the #1 pick, it doesn't matter if it's buried late in the first round, if you get that franchise quarterback in this quarterback-driven league by any means necessary, you've won yourself the first day of the draft. And I think Cleveland got the best guy.
I'm going with the New York Giants. In my opinion, this team has always been one running back away from being really good. And if you're a Giants fan, I'm sure you've seen enough of Orleans Darkwa. I'm sure you've seen enough of Wayne Gallman, and I'm sure you've seen enough. We'll go back a few more years to Brandon Jacobs. You have a franchise running back with Saquon Barkley. It takes pressure off of Eli Manning. It gives this offense a second and much needed dimension.
Awesome. Well, hey, guys, we did it. That wraps up our show for today. Thank you all so much for all of the hard work that you did, doing the research, crunching the numbers, filling out those mock drafts. I know that everybody at home watching really appreciated the insight that you all brought to our show tonight, so thank you so much. Thank you so much to our production crew for staying late too. We've been here for 4 hours, you guys, and you guys have worked extremely, extremely hard. And thank you, the people at home, for tuning in on Periscope and on YouTube. We really appreciate you. And finally, how can I forget the gentleman at the big board, Nick Mantis, Eric Alcantar, and of course, our reporter in the control room, Miss Olivia Reiner. So, I'm signing off here from Medill Sports Talk. I'm Jordan Klein. With me are the Barbershop Quartet of analysts, Darren, Jake, Connor, Dan. We can't wait to see you next time on our YouTube channel for some upcoming Medill Sports Talk shows. Thanks for sticking with us, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.